Kohinata Run, a 20-year-old man, kneels before a tall, elegant woman in what appears to be a grand, ceremonial chamber. He looks up at her with a bewildered expression, as the woman's presence seems to confirm a stark reality. He possesses no discernible abilities. Later, he finds himself walking through a bustling, modern city street, a stark contrast to the grand chamber. He feels a profound emptiness, his gaze distant. His phone buzzes, revealing a message from his company about a missed shift, confirming his growing sense of misfortune. He ponders his situation, acknowledging that working on a day off is not ideal, but quickly rationalizes it by reminding himself that he has no girlfriend to spend time with anyway. His misfortunes continue to mount as he walks. A black cat and its kitten cross his path, and moments later, a bird's droppings fall upon him. He sighs, convinced that the day is simply not going his way. As he walks past a convenience store, carrying a bag of rice balls, a sudden rush of wind, and a grateful thank you from someone passing by momentarily distract him from his gloomy thoughts. Suddenly, an older woman rushes past him, her voice sharp with alarm, shouting that a man is a purse snatcher. Rin watches, startled, as the woman pursues the fleeing figure. He gritted his teeth, his eyes wide with alarm as he spotted the fleeing thief. "Somebody, help!" he cried out, his voice strained as he began to give chase. Hey! Confident in his speed, he lunged forward, extending an arm to intercept the culprit. Just as he reached out, a blinding flash of light enveloped him, pulling him away from the chase. The intense light consumed his vision, his eyes wide with shock and confusion as the world around him dissolved into a brilliant, ethereal glow. When the light finally receded, he found himself kneeling on a polished floor in a vast, opulent hall, facing away from a tall, robed figure. The familiar street was gone, replaced by an unfamiliar grandeur. Meanwhile, a stern-faced king, adorned with a crown, demanded of the summoner, Marie, to re-verify the results. He adamantly refused to accept that the individual they had summoned could be so utterly incompetent. Marie, composed as ever, simply acknowledged his command. She then turned her gaze towards the kneeling man, her expression unreadable as he looked up at her. A mixture of fear and bewilderment etched across his face. As Marie observed him, glowing, ethereal strands, reminiscent of a double helix, materialized around his form, seemingly scanning his very essence. He stared in wide-eyed astonishment at the phenomenon, while Marie, with a slight tilt of her head, addressed her monarch. The results, she calmly reported, remained unchanged. His power was utterly ordinary, and he possessed no special abilities whatsoever. The news seemed to crush him, leaving him slumped in despair. The king, overhearing the confirmation, erupted in a furious outburst, demanding to know how many precious mana stones had been squandered on a summoning ritual that yielded such an incompetent individual. Marie concurred with the king's frustration, echoing his sentiment that the summoned one should, by all rights, possess the formidable abilities of a hero. The man, still slumped, could only listen to their damning assessment. He was abruptly questioned by the summoner, who demanded to know what he had been doing before his arrival in their world. He explained he had been chasing a purse snatcher when he suddenly appeared in their world. The summoner, acknowledging his account, then informed the king that this individual was likely unrelated to their intended hero. He internally questioned if his summoning was a mistake. The summoner clarified that the person he was chasing was most likely their true hero, and Rin was merely the closest individual to the summoning circle at the moment of activation. The king, observing the situation, expressed his concern, stating that Rin clearly stood no chance against the threats they faced. The summoner let out a frustrated sound. Alone, he pondered his predicament, wondering what his next move would be. He hoped he had received some special ability, like those in stories, but also worried about what the summoner might have seen when she assessed him. He felt lost, with no idea what was happening, and these people considered him useless. As he reflected, a shimmering, ethereal double helix structure materialized before him, captivating his gaze. He gasped in surprise, realizing he could perceive a faint, hidden detail within the glowing structure. "No way, I did it," he exclaimed, a surge of hope filling him as he wondered if there was something he could utilize. He discovered a series of unique abilities: Item Box, Unlimited, King of Mining, King of Smithing, and King of Harvesting. He initially rejoiced, thinking these were amazing, but then realized they weren't heroic skills. He quickly decided to keep his newfound powers a secret, understanding that revealing them might only reinforce their perception of him as useless. The summoner, accompanied by a stern-faced guard, ordered him to leave the castle immediately. He protested, demanding they either send him back to his world or guarantee his safety, but she coldly dismissed his concerns, stating she cared nothing for his well-being after the trouble of the ritual. With a sharp command, the summoner ordered the guards to drag him out of the castle. He desperately cried out, explaining he had no money and would surely get lost and perish like a stray dog outside. The guards moved to obey. He stood before Marie, who, still seething with frustration, declared her extreme irritation at the failed summoning. She warned him to be thankful he wasn't killed on the spot, but he simply dismissed her words, stating he didn't care. Moments later, outside the imposing castle walls, he found himself with a burly guard. The guard, expressing that he was merely following orders, offered a small apology in the form of several coins, which clinked into Ren's outstretched hand. Ren, touched by the unexpected gesture, thanked him profusely, thinking to himself that this man was truly a good person. The guard, with a slight smile, introduced himself as Ahab, telling Ren not to worry about his actions, as he had simply felt bad about the situation. As Ahab departed, Ren stood alone on a grassy hill overlooking a distant city, the vast, unfamiliar landscape stretching before him. He pondered his next move, wondering aloud where he should go now. Ahab, perhaps sensing Ren's uncertainty, reappeared and advised him that if he wished to live, he would first need money and a job. He explained that even without being a hero, one could become an adventurer, killing monsters and performing odd jobs daily, or find work within the city that didn't require leaving it, such as chores that could still provide food. Ren, walking away from Ahab, expressed his gratitude for all the help. He reflected on the stark contrast between the king and Marie's hostility and Ahab's unexpected kindness, realizing there were good people in this world too. Yet, a new concern arose. He knew nothing about this world's currency, but for now, following Ahab's advice seemed his only option. Ahab, with a warm smile, offered a final word of encouragement, urging Ren not to give up. He assured him that as long as he was alive, good things would eventually happen. He also shared that it was impossible to understand the minds of those in power, and expressed his genuine pleasure at having spoken with someone from another world. With Ahab's words echoing in his mind, he continued his solitary walk across the rolling hills, his footsteps crunching softly on the dry grass. He wondered, with a hint of trepidation, if he would truly be able to find a job in this unfamiliar land. His thoughts drifted back to his previous life, to the company he had worked for, and the mundane concerns of his old world. Yet, he quickly dismissed these lingering thoughts, realizing there was no use dwelling on the past now that he was here, in this new reality. With a renewed sense of purpose, he straightened his tie, a silent declaration of his resolve. He knew he had to do his best to survive in this world, no matter the challenges ahead. He walked through the bustling town square, the sounds of daily life a stark contrast to the quiet castle grounds he had just left. As he continued, his gaze fell upon a building that seemed to be the Adventurers Guild, a place he now knew was crucial for his survival. A wave of relief washed over him as he realized he could read the local script, confirming the town's name as Terralin. Inside the guild, he was greeted by a stunning young woman with long blonde hair, who smiled warmly and asked how she could assist him. He found himself momentarily captivated by her beauty. He composed himself and stated his intention to register as an adventurer, asking if it was permissible for him to do so. The receptionist, who introduced herself as Farah, assured him that anyone could become an adventurer. Farah then began to explain the fundamental structure of the guild, detailing how both adventurers and quests were categorized into 7 distinct ranks, ranging from F as the lowest to S as the highest. She then presented him with his very own adventurer card, which he accepted, still somewhat mesmerized by her presence. She further clarified that promotion through these ranks was achieved by successfully completing requests, but cautioned that adventurers were restricted to taking jobs only within their current rank or one rank above it. Farah continued, explaining that while there were currently no S-rank adventurers, S-rank requests did exist, typically submitted by the kingdom and requiring large groups to complete. He found the system surprisingly straightforward and imagined the prestige of reaching S-rank. He mused that the S-rank requests sounded akin to an army's reserve corps, and Farah confirmed that forming a party with other adventurers was mandatory for such high-level tasks, sometimes even requiring F ranks to join. Despite the talk of high-stakes missions, he observed the town around them seemed remarkably peaceful. His attention then shifted as Farah gestured towards a large wooden board on the wall, indicating that the papers posted there were the available requests. As he considered the options, he expressed his apprehension about facing goblins, which Farah noted were common starting quests for novice adventurers. He stood before the quest board, confidently declaring his intention to take on 3 requests simultaneously. The receptionist, Farah, looked on with a hint of surprise, questioning if he truly intended to undertake so many at once. She then suggested he choose his requests directly from the bulletin board, adding a stern warning that repeated failures could lead to his adventurer card being revoked. He listened intently, acknowledging that these tasks would keep him occupied until evening. With the requests officially registered, he pumped his fist in the air, a surge of excitement coursing through him as he embraced his first true job in this new world. Farah offered a warm smile and wished him good luck on his endeavors. The question lingered. What kind of requests had Ren chosen? The elderly woman spoke with a gentle smile, explaining that she had grown accustomed to loss since her husband and son had passed away some time ago. Her words prompted Ren to ask if the country was truly so dangerous. She reassured him that they were not currently at war, but conceded that a monster had attacked the city not long ago. Hearing of the monster, Ren's thoughts drifted to the idea of a hero, feeling a profound relief that he had not been chosen for such a perilous role. Meanwhile, the elderly woman thanked him for his visit. Later, as he spoke with the princess/maid, she complimented his attire, remarking on how well it suited him and inquiring if his homeland, the kingdom of Elric, utilized a different system. He internally acknowledged that his clothes were from another world, a fact he could not reveal. To further explain the world's economy, she demonstrated the local currency, detailing that a single copper coin was worth 10 lyre, and 100 copper coins, or 1,000 lyre, could be exchanged for a silver coin. These coins, she noted, were universally accepted. She then revealed the existence of a unique item called an item box, which allowed one to carry money anywhere, though she clarified it was an exception, as the royal family maintained control over most of them. Ren listened, his expression one of surprise. After these explanations, the princess/maid presented Ren with a new task, to care for a vast vineyard. She explained that the gardener was on vacation, and the replacement had apparently used too much magic on the soil, leaving the plants in disarray. He readily accepted the challenge, immediately setting to work harvesting the abundant grapes. As he gathered the fruit, a system message appeared, indicating that his King of Harvest skill had leveled up. With a determined resolve, he surveyed the vast vineyard, ready to continue his work. Hours later, as the sun began its descent, Rin stood amidst the harvested bounty, acknowledging that the work was complete and looked good, despite the late hour. The princess/maid approached, thanking him profusely and offering him the grapes as a personal reward. He politely declined, stating that the guild would compensate him, but she insisted he accept them. He found himself at an inn, requesting a room that included both breakfast and dinner. The innkeeper, a woman with a warm demeanor, informed him the cost would be 80 copper coins per night. As they spoke, a small child tugged gently at his blazer, drawing his attention. The innkeeper, noticing the child, asked what she wanted. The child, introducing herself as Nene, then presented her small dog, Lulu, to Run. He, in turn, introduced himself. The innkeeper quickly apologized for Lulu's overly friendly nature, explaining that the dog had been acting this way ever since her husband's passing. Later, as he accessed his item box, a look of profound surprise crossed his face. The magical storage space, which he had only recently acquired, was already filled to an astonishing degree with the grapes he had harvested, prompting him to wonder how it could hold so much. Rin stared in bewilderment at the intricate structure before him, questioning the purpose of the numerous leaves and water-filled bottles contained within it. It was a perplexing sight, unlike anything he had encountered before. He pondered if the strange items were, in fact, gold nuggets, a possibility that astonished him as he had never seen such things. He then recalled his mundane day, which had consisted solely of cleaning a yard, a gutter, and a grapefruit grove. As he held a glowing leaf, a sudden realization dawned upon him. His skill, King of Harvest, was automatically upgrading the items he picked up. With several gold nuggets now in his hands, he felt an overwhelming urge to test his King of Smithing skill. Later, in the quiet of his room, Rin fantasized about crafting items from gold and escaping his financial worries forever. However, he quickly dismissed the thought, understanding that if anyone discovered his newfound abilities, his peaceful existence would undoubtedly come to an end. He examined the nuggets again, surprised by their unexpected softness. He resolved to begin crafting protective equipment as soon as possible, deciding to seek out a smithy the very next day. His hand clenched in determination. With a curious touch, he began to knead one of the nuggets, finding its texture remarkably similar to clay. As he continued, the nugget began to whiten, prompting him to question if they were truly gold. He felt a mix of relief and disappointment, knowing that genuine gold would never be so pliable. His eyes widened in surprise as he instinctively activated Appraisal, a secondary skill of King of Smithing, wondering if there was a way to truly understand the nature of this transforming material. The appraisal revealed the material to be orichalcum. Rin was utterly stunned, realizing he had created such a rare substance simply by kneading the nuggets. He then wondered if merely touching metals would cause them to be upgraded by his King of Smithing skill. He considered his newly discovered abilities, realizing that if his King of Smithing skill could transform ordinary gold nuggets into rare orichalcum, then his King of Mining skill must possess a similar, powerful effect. Later, within the quiet confines of his room, he diligently worked, the rhythmic sound of kneading echoing softly as he manipulated the materials. The next morning, as he descended the stairs, a cheerful Nene greeted him warmly, wishing him a good day. He returned the greeting to the innkeeper, who informed him that breakfast would be ready shortly. He then offered her some grapes he had received from a client the previous day, suggesting she take them in exchange for his meals. She, however, insisted it was a gift, and there was no need for payment. As he stepped out into the bustling street, he reflected on a satchel he had recently acquired at a significant discount. Its deceptive interior allowed him to discreetly carry his item box without drawing unwanted attention. He soon encountered the princess maid, who greeted him with a bright smile. He informed her of his intention to clean a smithy that day. She looked at him with concern, explaining that cleaning a smithy was far more difficult than other requests and offered inferior pay. Despite her warnings, he firmly affirmed his decision. As he walked, he considered the immediate challenges. First, finding a blacksmith offering cleaning services, and then convincing them to allow him to use their smithy. He resolved to devise a plan if they demanded payment for its use. He eventually arrived at a smithy, its sturdy entrance hinting at the work within, and peered inside. Inside, a young woman with spiky blonde hair, leaning casually on a workbench, greeted him. She introduced herself, stating she had been sent by the guild to fulfill his request. She abruptly pulled Rin forward, startling him with her sudden action. Continuing from the previous panel, she announced loudly that an adventurer had arrived to clean, addressing someone as Grandpa. Rin remained behind her, observing. Moments later, Rin found himself face-to-face with an actual dwarf, expressing his surprise. The dwarf, a smith, instructed them to start with the chimney, emphasizing that proper ventilation was crucial for forging swords with the correct heat. Rin internally noted the dwarf's moody demeanor. Following the dwarf's instructions, Rin began the arduous task of cleaning the chimney, scaling the exterior wall with a long brush. Upon reaching the top, he paused, taking in the expansive view of the city from the rooftop, remarking on its brightness and how clearly he could see everything. Suddenly remembering his task, he quickly refocused on the cleaning. He realized that without detergents in this world, he would have to rely solely on water. As he prepared to use the water, he noticed a remarkable transformation. The ordinary water in his bottle had become something extraordinary, now labeled pure water. Armed with the newly purified water, he resumed scrubbing the chimney. To his astonishment, The grime came off with incredible ease, making the task far simpler than anticipated. He realized the pure water was a high-quality item. Below, the smithy worker watched him with wide-eyed amazement, exclaiming that no one had ever cleaned a chimney so quickly and wondering if he was a cleaning master. She then asked if he also intended to be a blacksmith. Rin, grateful for the use of the smithy, confirmed his intention, stating that he would clean the workbench thoroughly before using it. He enthusiastically declared that he already possessed the necessary materials, expressing gratitude for the offer. The smithy worker, Elena, informed him that while they wouldn't charge for the use of the smithy, he would need to acquire his own raw materials. She added that her grandfather, Guts, would be furious if she were to sell him any. The dwarf, Guts, looked on with a surprised expression, questioning if an amateur like him truly intended to become a blacksmith. Despite his skepticism, Guts sighed and relented, telling Rin to proceed. He grumbled under his breath about how youngsters nowadays believed everything was easy, while Rin looked on, taken aback. Elena then formally introduced herself, revealing she was the owner of the dragon sword smithy and the granddaughter of Guts. She explained that her parents had passed, leaving Guts as her only blood relative. She remarked on his unusual attire, but noted that Guts seemed to have taken a liking to him, to which he responded with surprise. She continued, mentioning that Guts had even complimented him on cleaning the chimney, a statement the dwarf confirmed with a grunt. He then formally introduced himself as Rin Kohinata, inviting her to simply call him Rin. Guts then presented him with a hammer, explaining it had belonged to his son and instructing him to use it well. He looked surprised, questioning if the dwarf was truly certain about the gift. Now equipped with an apron and the hammer, he confidently declared his intention to use the workbench. Elena offered her encouragement, while Guts, also donning an apron, remarked that tools, like skills, would rust if left unused, implying the hammer deserved to be wielded. As he prepared to begin, both he and Elena stared at a shimmering pile of material. Elena gasped, recognizing it as orichalcum. He confirmed her observation, admitting his excitement had caused him to reveal his secret prematurely. With powerful strikes, he began to forge, sending brilliant sparks flying. Elena and Guts watched in stunned silence as he realized the material was transforming into something far superior to anything he could normally create, attributing this phenomenon to his unique smithing ability. Guts observed the intense forging process, his thoughts consumed by the immense pressure of working with orichalcum. The blade, now taking shape, gleamed with an ethereal light. He listened as Grandpa Guts, still captivated by the orichalcum, declared that if Rin ever found more of the material, he would buy it at any price. Elena, however, quickly interjected, reminding Guts that they lacked the savings for such a precious material. Guts dismissed her concern, emphasizing the orichalcum's value and its potential to create something that could be sold at a high price. Rin, meanwhile, offered a somewhat evasive smile when asked about the source of his current peace. Reflecting on the situation, he realized that Guts was allowing him to use the smithy out of pure kindness. He felt a strong desire to return the favor, especially considering that for him, the orichalcum, which Guts considered so precious, had been nothing more than discarded refuse. Moments later, Guts continued to examine the orichalcum, musing that with its magical transmission power, which was double that of mithril, a shield would be the optimal creation. Rin then surprised him by offering to share some of the orichalcum in exchange for continued access to the smithy, a proposition that clearly astonished the dwarf. Elena, observing the exchange, acknowledged Rin's kind nature but expressed her discomfort with simply accepting such a valuable gift. She believed the orichalcum held more significance in Guts' experienced hands. Guts, for his part, simply stated that nothing could stop Rin when he was set on something. Later, Rin emerged from the smithy, now clad in new, practical equipment. He thanked Elena, who had helped him choose the gear, stating it would be very helpful. She then offered to select more equipment for him, which he happily accepted, entrusting the task to her. As night fell, he stood by a window, gazing out at the town. He reflected on the kindness shown to him by its people and resolved to repay them, vowing to do his best at cleaning the next day. His thoughts were interrupted when Nene called out to him, informing him that dinner was ready. He acknowledged her with a surprised but grateful expression. As he descended the stairs into the inn's common room, he was taken aback by the sheer number of customers. The room was bustling with chatter and activity, a sight he had not expected. The innkeeper, equally surprised by the crowd, greeted Rin. She remarked that while the inn's food and beds were comfortable, its remote location usually meant fewer customers. She wondered aloud what had caused the sudden influx. Rin, now amidst the lively crowd, realized this was his opportunity to repay Nene. The innkeeper then explained that the ale she had made with the grapes Rin gave her had become incredibly popular, drawing in all the new patrons. Understanding the cause of the commotion, Rin enthusiastically declared he would try to make a deal for more grapes the following day. Rin approached the elegant young woman, who greeted him by asking what she could do for him today. He replied that he had come to speak with her about something important. He explained that the ale made from the grapes he had previously given to the innkeeper had become incredibly popular, drawing many new patrons to the establishment. He then inquired if her master would be willing to sell grapes directly to the inn. She listened, her expression thoughtful. He declared his intention to visit the inn personally and assured her he would prepare all the necessary documents. She acknowledged his plan. Moments later, at the bustling inn, he requested a cup of the ale to taste it himself before making any final decisions. The innkeeper stood nearby, ready to serve. The innkeeper confirmed the ale's widespread popularity and offered a mug to the young woman, inviting her to try it for herself. She took a large gulp. Both Rin and the innkeeper watched, wide-eyed, as she rapidly consumed the ale, gulping it down with an unexpected fervor. She then exclaimed with genuine delight how exceptionally good the ale was, declaring that such a remarkable drink deserved to be known by everyone. The innkeeper's expression shifted from surprise to pleased astonishment. Ren, observing her unusual behavior, felt a growing suspicion that something was amiss with this maid. Meanwhile, the innkeeper, having secured a deal, stated she would discuss the merchandise with the merchant guild to prevent others from taking the initiative. The young woman then formally introduced herself, revealing her name to be Latina Iliard. Ren, utterly taken aback, stammered a question, asking if she wasn't truly a maid. She calmly confirmed his suspicion, stating she was, in fact, the owner of that very house. The innkeeper, equally stunned, gasped and asked if she meant the Iliard family from the hill. She smiles, revealing that her maid dress serves as a means to evaluate her guests. He looks surprised as she assures him that everyone is thankful for his efforts. They stand outside a building, ready to part ways. Elsewhere, an elderly woman and a woman with glasses discuss the town's condition, noting that despite the lack of overt discrimination, many people are in need, and the nobles are growing increasingly arrogant. Returning to Ren and Latina, she expresses her admiration for him, explaining that he is unlike other adventurers who prioritize monster hunting for prestige over helping with mundane tasks like cleaning. She suggests they get along, to which he hesitantly agrees. Later, Latina bids Ren farewell, thanking him for everything as he departs from her residence. He dismisses her gratitude, offering his assistance should she need it again. The scene then shifts to the Adventurers Guild, where a receptionist confirms Ren has completed 4 requests. She then inquires if he truly intends to avoid all hunting quests. Latina, now seen from behind, advises Ren that while she won't force him, she believes he should contribute to the guild and not remain in F rank indefinitely. He, looking troubled, admits he possesses the necessary equipment and had considered hunting, but still harbors worries. Ren reflects on his situation, realizing he cannot perpetually rely on Nene. He acknowledges that the dragon's cradle is thriving again, meaning he can no longer comfortably occupy one of their rooms. He recalls Nene's mother's kind words, who views him as a second child. He then turns to the receptionist, asking if any manageable F-rank requests are available. She points to a request to eliminate 1 or more goblins in the forest, a suggestion that visibly unnerves him. The receptionist observes him with a thoughtful, slightly concerned expression. Ren, taken aback, questions her, stating he would understand if a seasoned adventurer were to accompany him, but wonders if a receptionist is even permitted to do so. With a determined stance, she declares that since this will be his inaugural hunt, she will join him. She explained that as an adventurer on active duty, and with her shift almost over, she was free to accompany him. With a confident smile, she declared she would go get ready. Moments later, she reappeared, now clad in adventurer gear, and with a casual air, she announced they were ready to depart. Ren, taken aback by her transformation and less formal speech, found himself thinking how incredibly cool she was. Ren, still somewhat apprehensive, watched her lead the way. She reassured him, mentioning that she possessed an orichalcum short sword, implying her readiness for combat. Soon, they spotted their targets, 2 goblins lurking near a cave entrance. Ren, hidden in the undergrowth, felt a surge of anxiety, wondering if he could handle fighting 2 opponents for the first time. Suddenly, a guttural cry echoed through the trees. Ren looked up in shock as a massive orc, its skin a sickly green, emerged, dragging a struggling female adventurer by her hair. The receptionist immediately recognized the orc's unusual body and color, questioning if it was a superior variant, and realized this meant a large number of orcs and goblins were likely nearby. The captured adventurer screamed for release. Without hesitation, the receptionist declared she would take the lead and instructed Ren to watch her back, urging him to save the captive. With incredible speed, she lunged forward, her short sword ablur, and cleanly bisected the orc, sending a spray of dark blood across the forest floor. Ren watched in stunned amazement as the orc fell, realizing the true danger of the situation. She then quickly urged him to follow, explaining that orcs would return to their lair with prey to breed, making this the opportune moment to strike. They quickly moved into the dark, cavernous entrance, the receptionist leading the way. Ren, now understanding the urgency, realized this was indeed the best opportunity for a surprise attack, and that they needed to hurry. Deeper within the twisting tunnels, they proceeded with caution, the air growing heavy with the stench of the creatures. As they rounded a corner, they discovered a small group of goblins huddled together, seemingly unaware of their presence. The receptionist, her sword already drawn, prepared to strike. She explained the importance of having stun needles readily available, emphasizing that the first rule of a cave raid was to move without making a sound. They advanced cautiously past several incapacitated goblins. She then instructed him to finish off one of the stunned goblins, urging him to act. He hesitated, a grimace of discomfort on his face, but steeled himself with the thought that he had to do it if he wanted to be an adventurer and save the girl. He struggled with the aftermath of his first kill, visibly shaken, as she calmly inquired if he could continue. He affirmed his resolve, assuring her he was fine and reiterating their mission to save the girl. They continued deeper into the cavern, where they spotted a massive orc. She noted that this particular one seemed different from the others. She prepared her last stun needle, realizing they were in a blind spot and could not ascertain the number of enemies ahead. Time was quickly running out. She swiftly deployed the stun needle, causing the massive orc to collapse. She then instructed Ren to check the surrounding area, and he readily agreed, unaware of the cloaked figure lurking nearby. The cloaked figure revealed itself to be a goblin shaman, a dangerous foe that immediately alarmed the receptionist. As she cried out in recognition, the ground began to rumble violently. The receptionist, blaming herself for the oversight, realized with dread that the orc was about to begin its breeding cycle, urging Rin to move quickly. She watched as Rin, holding a pickaxe, declared he would dig a path for them. She questioned his intent, asking what he planned to dig. He moved with astonishing speed, his pickaxe tearing through the solid rock as if it were soft earth, rapidly clearing a passage. The receptionist stared in disbelief, wondering how he could dig so effortlessly. Suddenly, their attention was drawn to a horrifying sight. The female adventurer they had rescued earlier was now being violently attacked by a massive orc. She cried out in terror as the beast overwhelmed her, while Rin and the receptionist watched, stunned. He immediately sprang into action, charging towards the monstrous creature with a furious shout, demanding it leave her alone. Meanwhile, the receptionist, now gripping a sword, assessed the sheer size of the orc, realizing the immense challenge before them. A monstrous orc loomed over Rin and the female adventurer, its presence radiating menace. The female adventurer engaged the beast, but Rin could only watch in shock as she struggled, calling out her name in alarm. Suddenly, he lunged forward, a small blade in hand, striking the orc with surprising force. As the orc recoiled, the female adventurer urged Rin to protect her, while he, in turn, asked if she was unharmed. She acknowledged his concern with a grateful, "Yes, thank you." Despite their efforts, the orc recovered quickly, letting out a guttural sound as it seized the female adventurer, lifting her from the ground. Rin watched in horror, shouting her name once more. Without hesitation, he intercepted the orc's next attack, taking the full force of a blow to his shoulder as he shielded the female adventurer. Blood splattered from the impact. The orc, momentarily stunned by the unexpected resistance, stared at the injured Rin, who grimaced in pain. Beside him, the female adventurer's eyes widened in shock at the sight of his wound. Moments later, the battle concluded. The orc's massive form began to dissolve into particles of light, leaving Rin and the female adventurer standing amidst the fading magical residue. Rin, still holding his blade, wondered aloud if his strike had been a lucky one, attributing its power to the orichalcum. The female adventurer, however, was less concerned with luck and more astonished, questioning how he had sliced through the monster with such a weapon. Seeing his reluctance to elaborate, she conceded that if he preferred not to discuss it, that was fine, and suggested they return to town. She congratulated Rin on his successful first hunt, noting that he likely ranked up and should check at the guild later. She then offered to escort him to his inn so he could rest, an offer he gratefully accepted. Later that evening, the town settled into a quiet calm, its buildings silhouetted against the twilight sky. Back in his room, he sat on the bed, a look of astonishment on his face as a glowing, ethereal cube materialized before him, revealing an intricate interface. He quickly realized the cube was an item box, and that his King of Harvesting skill automatically collected and stored items within it. Holding a small rock, he pondered if he could need it, wondering about its potential. His experimentation continued, revealing that he could also manipulate the equipment dropped by goblins. He held a gleaming, spherical object, speculating it might be mithril, and marveled at the incredible power of his new skill. However, he soon discovered a limitation. While his King of Smelting skill allowed him to upgrade items, each could only be enhanced once, with the notable exception of orichalcum. The following day, he walked through the town, still needing various materials, intending to take them to Grandpa Guts at the smithy. Upon arriving at the smithy, a familiar face greeted him warmly, explaining that Grandpa Guts was currently busy and that she could assist him instead. He then informed her that he had come to sell some materials. She was utterly astonished by the sheer quantity of mithril he had brought, suggesting that for such a bulk sale, he should instead visit the Merchant Guild. The mention of this new guild left Rin looking quite surprised. He listened intently as the adventurer explained the intricacies of the world's economy. Selling a vast quantity of goods to a single store would inevitably draw unwanted attention, as the merchant guilds, present in countless towns, were the true arbiters of market flow. Rin, wide-eyed, realized the gravity of his potential misstep, acknowledging that he had nearly disrupted the delicate balance of this world's commerce. Following the advice, Rin soon found himself before the grand edifice of the Merchant Guild. He stepped inside, where a stern-faced guild staff member greeted him. Rin, with a determined expression, declared his intention to sell a large quantity of materials. However, the guild staff member regarded him with skepticism, questioning his appearance. He stated that Rin did not resemble either a merchant or a seasoned adventurer, implying he was out of place. He then curtly dismissed Rin, declaring the guild was already well-stocked and instructing him to leave. Rin was utterly shocked, realizing with dismay that he had been turned away and that selling his bulk materials elsewhere would be a violation of the law. Standing outside, bewildered and unsure of his next move, Rin heard a familiar voice call out, inquiring if he was Kohina San. It was the elderly woman, who approached him with a warm smile, thanking him for cleaning her house the other day. She then asked what brought him to the Merchant Guild, and upon hearing that he had been turned away, she expressed her concern. Upon seeing the elderly woman, the guild staff member's demeanor changed dramatically. He recognized her as Niblis-sama, and frantically asked if she knew Rin. Niblis-sama, however, calmly instructed him to listen, asserting that he could not turn people away without first understanding what they had to offer. The staff member was visibly stunned by her authority. With a gentle but firm smile, Niblis-sama reiterated her command. He must treat all visitors politely. The staff member, now completely subservient, meekly agreed. Moments later, within a more private and opulent chamber, Nibla-sama sat comfortably, offering her apologies for the earlier incident. Run, now also seated, reassured her not to worry, admitting that his appearance often made him seem suspicious. Nibla-sama chuckled softly, expressing her relief at being present to vouch for him, and affirmed her belief that he was a very kind person. He sat across from the guild master, ready to discuss the details of his sale. She inquired about his recent activities, noting he had been taking requests from people needing help and stores lacking personnel. He admitted he simply needed the money. The guild master, Nibla-sama, confirmed the material was indeed mithril, and an extremely pure one at that. She stated they would pay him a significant sum for the 30 pieces and instructed him to deliver the goods to the back of the guild. She reassured him not to worry, explaining she would check the items later, emphasizing that she was only proceeding this way because she trusted him. He, however, was taken aback, questioning how she could decide on payment without inspecting the rest of the goods. With a gentle smile, she formally reintroduced herself as Niblis Albaid, revealing her true title as the guild master of the Merchant Guild. His eyes widened in shock at the revelation. Following the successful transaction, the bustling activity of the guild's rear entrance came into view, with workers loading and unloading goods from various carts and wagons. Observing the scene, he realized he could acquire a cart with his payment. He mused that such a vehicle would be convenient for transporting goods and would also help him conceal his item box from curious eyes. He gazed out at the town, contemplating the vastness of this new world and the desire to explore beyond the city walls. For now, however, he decided to remain within the town, concluding that buying a cart would indeed make his movements much easier. Upon his return to the inn, the innkeeper greeted him warmly, then informed him that he had a guest waiting. He looked surprised by the news. The guest, a young female adventurer, waved cheerfully as she presented him with a neatly folded set of clothes. She expressed her sincere gratitude for his assistance the other day. She reiterated her thanks, acknowledging that she didn't know where she would be without his timely rescue. He, in turn, recognized her with a gasp, realizing she was the adventurer he had traveled with in the cave. The female adventurer reflected on her recent ordeal, admitting she had been so engrossed in her mission that her guard had dropped, leading to her capture by a mutant orc. She recalled dropping her bow and expressed surprise at encountering such a creature in that particular part of the forest. He reacted with surprise, questioning her suggestion of forming a party. She then clarified her purpose, stating she had come specifically to ask him to form a party with her, and inquired if he was unwilling. Rin inwardly groaned, torn between the desire to accept and the need to keep his item box and king skills a secret. The female adventurer watched him, her expression hopeful. He attempted to deflect, asking if she hadn't already been part of a party. He then expressed his happiness at her invitation, but firmly stated his intention not to form a party with anyone. She quickly interjected, explaining that her previous situation was unavoidable and that she, too, possessed secrets she wished to keep hidden. She then directly questioned if he was referring to his sword skill. Ren's eyes widened in shock as she revealed her knowledge of his combat prowess, specifically mentioning how he had sliced the orc's head along with its weapon. She pressed him further, asking what skill he had used, and then dropped the bombshell that it had been his first time swinging a sword. He was utterly stunned by her insight. She acknowledged his reluctance to form a party, stating she understood, but declared she would give up for today. Ren, still reeling from her revelations, reiterated his refusal. Moments later, the innkeeper approached their table, announcing the arrival of their order. Ren's attention shifted to the food, exclaiming how delicious it looked. The female adventurer then formally introduced herself as Windy, inviting him to call her Wind. She cheerfully declared that she had not given up on her goal, praised the food's taste, and mused about potentially moving into the inn. Ren, still processing the rapid turn of events, politely returned her greeting. A young boy _A, cheerfully announced that breakfast was ready, greeting his older brother. The horn girl, Windy, also offered a bright good morning to Ren. Ren, still in bed, looked surprised as Windy, with a wide smile, assured him she would not press her previous offer for the time being. He looked at her with a hint of concern, asking if he was expected to sit elsewhere for their meal. Moments later, Nene, a kind-faced woman, served them their breakfast, encouraging both Ren and Windy to eat heartily. Nene chuckled, playfully asking Ren why he wore such a long face, then affectionately remarked on Windy's cuteness. Ren seemed slightly embarrassed by the comment. As he ate, Ren internally mused about the inconvenience of having to conceal his newly acquired skills, particularly the formidable king of smithing. Meanwhile, Windy and he giggled, seemingly agreeing with Nene's assessment of Windy's charm. After finishing his meal, Ren bid farewell to Nene and A, promising to take care of some cleaning. They waved him off as he departed. Nene greeted Ren, who was now standing by a window. Windy, however, reacted with a startled gasp, questioning if he had truly said cleaning, implying a more violent interpretation of the word. Ren explained to Nene that after a recent incident, Windy had approached him to express her gratitude and subsequently asked him to form a party, an offer he had declined. Nene, understanding, offered to speak with Windy if her persistence became troublesome. Ren then noticed Windy in the background, observing her with a puzzled expression, wondering what the adventurer they had saved was now doing. He was asked by Nene if he would be handling the cleaning tasks again today. He quickly insisted that there was no need for her to worry, as he could take care of it himself. After Nene thanked him for his diligent service, he explained his plan. First, he would deliver some items to the Merchant Guild, and then proceed with his usual cleaning routine. As he made his way through the narrow streets, he realized with a sigh that Wendy was still tailing him. He mused to himself that he needed to acquire a cart for his tasks. Moments later, he was seen standing with Nene near a horse-drawn cart, preparing for his departure, while Wendy observed them from a discreet distance, her presence unnoticed by the others. Just as he was about to depart, Wendy suddenly appeared, calling out to him with a familiar nickname. She questioned why he wasn't getting onto the cart, catching him completely by surprise. He admitted his lack of experience, explaining that he didn't know how to handle the cart. Wendy, seizing the opportunity, declared with a confident smile that she would do it for him, boasting of her skills as a great coachwoman, and directly asking if she could become his party member. Despite her enthusiasm, he expressed a lingering concern about her ability to keep secrets, to which she earnestly assured him that she absolutely could. He acknowledged her amazing offer, but still seemed to weigh the implications. With unwavering determination, she beamed, promising to do her absolute best and declaring that, starting today, she would be coaching his cart. Her eagerness was palpable as she confirmed her commitment. He, in turn, pondered the situation, concluding that having her assist him would likely be a better option than hiring a complete stranger. As he considered the implications, he observed her, noting that she didn't appear to be a bad person. He wondered if she would truly be able to keep his skills a secret if he were to confide in her. Meanwhile, Wendy celebrated her perceived victory with an exuberant cheer. He began his day with a familiar greeting from Nene, who wished him good morning as he prepared to depart. With a determined spirit, he declared his destination, the Merchant Guild. Upon arriving at the Merchant Guild, he was met by an elderly man, Niblis, who greeted him warmly. Niblis inquired if the goods were inside the cart, while internally calculating the total amount. The conversation continued, with Rin expressing surprise at the generous payment, asking if it wasn't too much. Nene, however, simply smiled, explaining that she was merely investing in him because he consistently brought good quality items. Nene reassured him, telling him not to worry, as he always helped them, and she invited him to clean her house again someday. Overwhelmed by her kindness, he thanked her profusely for everything she had done. After the heartfelt exchange, he found himself reflecting on the kindness of the townspeople, wondering if he would truly be able to live a good life in this new world. His contemplative thoughts were interrupted by Wendy, who cheerfully greeted him, exclaiming that she had been waiting for him. She then mentioned that her grandpa was so engrossed in his work that the chimney had become a complete mess, adding that his intense focus was concerning. He listened to her concerns, acknowledging her point. Wendy then explained that orichalcum seemed more difficult to handle than they had initially thought, and her grandpa simply refused to admit it. Indeed, the evidence was clear as a figure could be seen atop a distant building, diligently working on a chimney, a plume of dark smoke rising from it. Moments later, they found Niblis, who, upon noticing Ren, expressed surprise at his presence. He quickly offered Ren some water, and then, holding up a circular, shield-like object, asked him to take a look, stating it was good timing. He took the object, his eyes widening in surprise as he recognized it as an orichalcum shield. However, a critical thought immediately followed. Compared to the short sword he had crafted, this shield appeared inferior. He admitted that while the orichalcum shield was impressive, it lacked the potent aura of the sword he had crafted using his king of smithing skill. Niblis, with a knowing look, acknowledged his observation. Niblis then let out a hearty laugh, conceding that he still had much to learn, especially when working with orichalcum. Suddenly, Niblis turned to Wendy, addressing her as Elena, and declared that she should marry Ren, stating it as an unequivocal order. Both Ren and Wendy reacted with utter shock. Wendy, flustered, immediately questioned Niblis, asking why he would say such a thing so abruptly. Ren, equally embarrassed, urged Niblis to stop joking, but the elder man pressed Wendy, asking if she was truly against the idea. Ren, blushing profusely, tried to explain that his king of smithing skill was merely something he had received after being summoned to this world, and that Niblis, despite being a relative, could not make such a decision for Wendy. Niblis, however, was entirely serious, revealing his desire for a cute descendant from the god of smithing. Wendy quickly apologized to Ren for Niblis's outrageous suggestion, urging him to forget what had been said. He accepted her apology, assuring her he would visit again. Moments later, as he walked down a bustling street, Nene spotted him and called out his name. Wendy then caught up to him, scolding him for leaving her and the cart behind. He quickly apologized, explaining that he had assumed she knew the way. Later, within the warm confines of an inn's dining hall, Nene, Boy_, Ren, and Wendy were gathered around a large wooden table. He clarified to Wendy that he had accepted her as a coachwoman, not as a full party member. Wendy, pouting, insisted that as a party member, they should do things together, then playfully accused him of being interested in her body. He, flustered, quickly told her not to say such things, especially since Lulu-chan might start copying her. Wendy, still with a slight pout, agreed. Later, as they sat at the dining table, he asked Wendy about her plans after dinner. She simply stated her intention to sleep. A knowing grin spread across Nene's face in the background. He then, with a serious expression, invited Wendy to his room. Her eyes widened in surprise. Wendy, now intrigued and a little flustered, eagerly asked what it was. He hesitated, telling her to forget it, but then reconsidered, explaining it was something she needed to get accustomed to avoid future problems. She, beaming, asked if this was because she was his partner. He, now in his room, instructed her that what he was about to show her must remain a secret, confirming he had something important to reveal. Kneeling on the bed, she asked if he was referring to his secrets. He affirmed, explaining that since they would be partners from now on, she deserved to know. She happily promised not to tell anyone. He then held a finger to his lips, signaling silence, before gesturing to reveal a glowing, ethereal item box. Wendy gasped, exclaiming about the item box and asking if this was his secret. He, still with a finger to his lips, indicated there was more to see. Rin held up the dagger, now gleaming with an unnatural luster. Wendy observed the transformation, remarking that the weapon looked brand new. She questioned what he had done, noting that the dagger no longer appeared to be made of steel. He explained that he possessed a unique skill allowing him to upgrade anything he touched. Wendy, still processing the revelation, asked if his incredible skill meant he could also upgrade her bow. He readily agreed, offering to demonstrate the skill immediately. As he touched her bow, it shimmered and transformed, adapting itself to her. Wendy gasped in awe, exclaiming that it must now be an amazing weapon. She then expressed her gratitude for him sharing such an important secret and pledged to repay his trust as his partner. He, in turn, told her he was glad she liked it, while internally marveling at his own Rin ability, believing it made him capable of fighting almost anything. He then suggested they embark on a trip to the Kaluza mine, noting her proficiency in handling a cart. She inquired if he meant a mine. He mused to himself, recalling the materials he had acquired while digging a hole to save Wendy earlier, and wondered what kind of treasures a real mine might yield. The two stood outside a quaint house. He remarked that it had been some time since his last visit to clean, and asked if she had been out of town. He looked at Wendy, surprised, asking why she had gone to the castle. She confirmed her visit, her expression thoughtful. She then explained that she had gone to visit her friend Marie, whom she hadn't seen in a long time, because she had heard Marie was imprisoned for making a mistake. Wendy further revealed that Marie was the royal court's magician. Ren, shocked by the news of imprisonment, wondered aloud what could have possibly happened to her. He pondered the implications, realizing Marie was likely punished for summoning him instead of the designated hero. He struggled to understand the castle's desperate motives for military strength, questioning why they would imprison their own summoner. Meanwhile, as they continued their journey by wagon, Wendy asked Ren about his specific plans for the mine. He replied that he had picked up a request to obtain some copper. He held up a small shovel, clarifying that while not all of his plans involved copper, it wouldn't hurt to increase his stock of various minerals. Wendy then asked if his overall plan was to obtain all kinds of minerals. She then playfully suggested that as an archer, she was hoping he could make her a new item, quickly dismissing it as a joke. Ren, however, asked her why she would even ask such a thing. He reassured her, stating that as partners, she should simply tell him if she needed something. His kindness touched Wendy deeply. The wagon continued its steady progress along a winding path through a dense forest. As the wagon continued its journey, she suddenly sensed something approaching, her expression turning serious. Ren, noticing her change, wondered what it could be. Her heightened senses had been accurate. A cart, seemingly pursued, rapidly approached, and the situation looked dire. Ren, quickly preparing an arrow, instructed her to imbue it with earth magic before firing. Moments later, the cart, pulled by a panicked horse, became visible, under attack by large, horned sheep-like creatures. A man inside cried for help. Following Ren's instruction, she fired the earth-imbued arrow, striking one of the creatures with surprising force. She exclaimed in amazement at the power. With the first creature dealt with, he then charged into the fray, wielding his weapon and striking the remaining beasts. He noted their unexpected speed, but soon, the battle was over, and he confirmed his success. The elderly merchant, now safe, emerged from his cart, expressing profound gratitude to his saviors. Ren acknowledged the merchant's thanks, wishing him safe travels. She, however, advised the merchant to be more careful on his journey and consider hiring bodyguards, inquiring if he was a wandering merchant. She immediately recognized the orb as a Ludsheep gem, a very rare item. She explained that using it allowed one to summon the magical beast that dropped the gem as a servant, or even make a magical beast incredibly powerful. He was visibly excited by this revelation, exclaiming in wonder. He eagerly declared his intention to try out the summoning ability later if he got the chance. Continuing their journey, they finally arrived at the Kaluza mine. He observed that while dwarves once sought rare minerals here, it was now a den of many creatures. He questioned if regular minerals still remained, despite the mine being overrun. She confirmed that such quests, like mining copper, could still be found occasionally, otherwise no one would have put a request for it. He thanked her for her assistance as they walked deeper into the Kaluza mine. She, in turn, reminded him that her duties extended beyond mere escort, encompassing the elimination of any goblins and slimes they might encounter. He suddenly stopped, his expression shifting to one of surprise and concern, as a faint, unsettling sound echoed from the dark depths of the mine ahead. Wendy, now beside him, confirmed his suspicion, stating that it appeared an arachnid creature was nearby. She confidently added that even if it proved to be a deadly spider, it would be no match for the arrows he had meticulously crafted for her. He chuckled nervously, his wary expression unchanged, admitting he wished he had prepared something to counter poison. Wendy then issued a stern warning, explaining that it was a spider with a skull pattern, possessing a deadly venom, and urged him to exercise extreme caution. He considered the situation, realizing he possessed an abundance of world tree leaves from his past cleaning endeavors. He resolved to utilize his gathering skill to craft an antidote from them, carefully storing the leaves in his item box. The mine tunnel stretched onward, a dark and foreboding passage, with only the faint glow of their torch piercing the oppressive gloom. As they proceeded, he began to extract minerals from the mine walls, finding the task surprisingly effortless. He noted with satisfaction that his gathering skill was functioning perfectly, bringing him closer to completing his quest. Suddenly, Wendy called out to him, announcing the completion of her own quests. He expressed his astonishment at her swiftness, but then pondered why he had yet to unearth any rare minerals despite delving deeper. Just then, a group of goblins burst from the shadows, charging towards them. Wendy swiftly dispatched them with a volley of arrows, earning his admiration. He then inquired if she was willing to venture even further into the mine's depths. The two adventurers ventured deeper into the mine, the tunnel becoming increasingly dark and cavernous, with strange, luminous points of light beginning to the rough-hewn walls. She readily agreed to his proposal, assuring him that she would handle any threats that emerged. He, meanwhile, gazed intently at the glowing stones embedded in the tunnel walls, wondering aloud if they were mithril, remarking that the sight was like something out of a fantastical movie. He knelt, examining the rocky ground, his eyes widening as he discovered something unusual. Whoa, what is this? He wondered, picking up a small, spherical object. A gem. Holding the peculiar object aloft, he realized it was a golem gem, its surface smooth and faintly glowing. His expression was one of surprise and curiosity. As he pondered the gem's nature, Wendy called out from behind him, alerting him to their surroundings. He turned, asking if the gem implied a golem had been buried within the very walls of the mine. Beyond them, the cavern stretched into a vast expanse, choked with thick, intricate webs. The air itself seemed to hum with the presence of deadly spiders. Wendy, observing the sheer number of arachnids, voiced her concern, admitting her arrows might not be enough to handle such a horde. He, meanwhile, continued to scan the dense webbing, noting the scale of the infestation. Suddenly, a thought struck him, and he declared they could use the gem he had just found. Wendy, surprised, questioned how he intended to employ it. He quickly outlined his strategy, gesturing with his hands as he explained the steps. Wendy listened intently, her expression shifting to understanding as she grasped the full scope of his plan. With the plan set, he confirmed his readiness, and Wendy, her bow now drawn and ready, echoed his sentiment, signaling her preparedness for the impending action. With a powerful shout of "Go, Golem!" he unleashed the gem's power. A massive golem materialized, its colossal form bursting through the thick spider webs, ready to clear their path. The colossal golem stood as a dark, imposing silhouette, its eyes glowing ominously as it prepared to unleash its true power against the horde of monstrous spider-like creatures that swarmed around it. As the battle raged, the spider-like creatures proved to be formidable foes, their attacks leaving behind a noxious, corrosive fluid. Ren, witnessing the damage, exclaimed that the substance was poison, a fact Wendy confirmed, lamenting its troublesome nature. Realizing the danger of close combat, he considered the materials he had gathered, saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal. He mused that combining them would create gunpowder, a valuable asset in their current predicament. With a decisive call to Wendy, he initiated their plan. She swiftly conjured a powerful gust of wind, propelling the newly formed gunpowder towards their arachnid adversaries. The resulting explosion decimated the creatures, and he cheered, celebrating their successful tactic. The ground trembled and cracked under the force of the blast, sending debris flying as the remaining spider-like creatures were thrown back, their forms mangled by the concussive force. Despite the initial success, Wendy warned Ren not to drop his guard, as some of the creatures still lived. Just then, the golem moved with renewed purpose, delivering a devastating blow that impaled one of the surviving spiders, its body gushing blood. With the last of the monstrous spiders defeated, the golem stood tall amidst the smoldering remains of its foes, its imposing figure a testament to its power. Ren and Wendy surveyed the aftermath, the cavern now quiet save for the crackling embers. Wendy expressed her amazement at their victory, noting the sheer number of adversaries they had overcome. Ren, equally impressed, could only utter a single word in response: amazing. As the golem let out a satisfied thud, Wendy enthusiastically praised Ren, calling him Ren, and then extended her gratitude to the golem as well, acknowledging its crucial role in their success. As evening descended, casting long shadows across the path, Ren and Wendy decided to make camp for the night. He then observed the small, friendly spider-like creatures that had appeared, noting that they seemed to be rare items, easily acquired thanks to his King of Gathering ability. He decided it was the perfect time to ask these spiders to keep watch while they rested. He listened as Wendy praised his diverse talents, noting that he not only crafted items, but also performed feats akin to a summoner. He seemed taken aback by her words, asking for clarification. He thanked her, a slight smile gracing his lips, as she expressed relief that they no longer needed to fear night raids thanks to his preparations. As the night deepened, he sat on a log, observing one of the friendly spiders. He mused that whenever he joined a temporary party, he invariably found himself on lookout duty due to his role as a hunter. The camp remained peaceful under the watchful eyes of the summoned creatures, the wagon and the golem standing silent sentinels in the moonlit clearing. The next morning, Wendy approached him with a question, asking if the monsters he summoned from gems obeyed his every command. He confirmed that so far, they had followed every instruction without fail. A spark of an idea lit up her eyes, and she hinted at a request. Moments later, Wendy was perched atop the golem, exclaiming with delight at the height. He cautioned her to take it easy on the way back, while she, from her elevated position, reported that the path ahead appeared clear of the dangerous monsters they had previously encountered. Later, as they continued their journey, he paused to examine his inventory. He observed that the synthesis process did not seem to apply to upgraded drop items, but he had successfully managed to combine a few of the spider gems. He pondered the ideal scenario, wishing he could both synthesize and upgrade items simultaneously, though he admitted it might be asking too much. Suddenly, a wave of surprise washed over him as he realized his king of blacksmithing skill had leveled up. He quickly questioned if his recent attempts at combining items were the cause. He confirmed his new capability. He could now combine the items he had crafted. While he still couldn't add special effects with this type of processing, the realization of these new possibilities brought a hopeful expression to his face. He continued his journey, when suddenly, Wendy's excited voice cut through the air, announcing that the town was finally in sight. Upon reaching the town's entrance, a guard immediately hailed them. Run, realizing the golem's imposing presence might draw unwanted attention, decided to dismiss it, much to Wendy's slight disappointment. Moments later, 3 armored guards approached, one of them directly addressing Ren by name and stating that the king had summoned him to the castle immediately. Ren and Wendy reacted with shock to the sudden summons. As the guards attempted to separate them, one of the guards insisted that Wendy was not required to accompany Ren, prompting her to angrily question their actions. Despite Wendy's protests and her desperate call, the guards forcibly escorted Ren away, leaving her behind with the carriage. Inside the castle, Ren was confronted by Marie, who greeted him with a knowing look. He was visibly stunned, questioning how she could be free when he believed she was imprisoned. Marie then accused him of deception, claiming he had lied to them and possessed a special ability. She demanded to know the nature of this power, her voice filled with a mix of anger and curiosity. As the tension mounted, a red-haired commander intervened, suggesting to Marie that for now, they should take Ren inside the castle to continue their discussion. Marie, after a moment of consideration, agreed to the commander's suggestion, instructing them to bring Ren over to her. The imposing structure of the castle stood under a cloudy sky, a silent witness to the unfolding events. She stood before the cell, her gaze fixed on Ren. Marie declared that this would be his room starting today, and he would only be released once he decided to reveal the truth she saw. He remained silent within the confines of the cell, his expression unreadable as the heavy bars separated him from the outside world. He pondered the situation, wondering if revealing the truth about his ability would truly lead to his freedom, though he doubted it. As he began to clean the dusty cell, he found himself unearthing valuable items like gold dust and world tree leaves, a stark reminder of the potent ability he possessed. He questioned if his current imprisonment was, in some way, a consequence of his own power. He continued to reflect on how Marie could have discovered his secret, considering if someone he had met during a past quest might have inadvertently revealed it. He mused that if he were a king or a noble, such a power would be incredibly useful. His thoughts then drifted to his companions, Nene, Latina, and Niblis, wondering if they, too, had some inkling about his hidden ability. He looked out from his cell, a pang of hunger striking him as he idly wondered if anyone might spare some food. Yet, he quickly dismissed the fleeting thought, refusing to doubt the good intentions of those who had been kind to him. As he peered through the bars, a sudden realization dawned upon him. He was not alone in this prison. There were other people held captive nearby. In an adjacent cell, a man with long, light-colored hair sat, his expression serious and contemplative, a new, enigmatic figure in Ren's unexpected confinement. Inside the prison, Ren offered a piece of Nene's bread to a fellow inmate, who gratefully accepted it, remarking on Ren's kindness. The inmate then questioned why Ren, a seemingly good person, found himself in such a place. Ren, recalling Nene's unusually stern expression, mused that his imprisonment must stem from something serious, though he maintained he had done nothing wrong. The other inmate, intrigued by Ren's situation, then turned the question back to him, asking why he was there, sensing a deeper story behind his presence. He then revealed his own reason for incarceration. He had been thrown into prison for deserting the battlefield after fleeing a rampaging horde of monsters. Hearing of monsters, Ren's thoughts drifted to Nibelus, who had also mentioned such creatures. He then inquired about the well-being of everyone outside the prison walls. The inmate explained that many of the men who fought back against the monsters had perished. Despite his own flight, he confessed that he had still wanted to help protect the town, just like everyone else. Ren reassured him, stating it was not his fault, as everyone harbored a fear of dying. He then realized this explained the prevalence of widows in the town. A pang of regret struck him as he wondered if things might have unfolded differently had he possessed more courage. The inmate offered a grateful chuckle, thanking Ren. He then introduced himself as Rufus, prompting Ren to reciprocate, stating his own name. Ren reflected on his predicament. Though his belongings had been confiscated, his item box remained, a small comfort. He knew he could break out at any moment, but he hesitated, unwilling to cause chaos or endanger anyone. He resolved to bide his time, secretly continuing to forge until the opportune moment arrived. He continued his conversation with Rufus, asking if it was true that the golem had single-handedly defeated an entire swarm of spiders. Rufus, impressed, confirmed the incredible feat. Suddenly, Rufus sensed an approaching presence and quickly warned Ren to be silent. A cloaked figure entered the prison corridor, revealing herself to be Marie, who then addressed Rufus by the name Kohinata, asking if he was finally ready to speak. Marie then turned her attention to Ren, sternly informing him that he would receive no meals until he confessed, urging him to give up his resistance. She pressed further, asserting that he had hidden his abilities well, but despite being from another world with no connections, he seemed to be doing quite well. She declared that his time was over. The king had ordered his abilities analyzed, and he would be turned into a slave. Ren, however, seemed more preoccupied with his hunger, wondering if he could get some bread, a thought that surprised Rufus, who questioned his composure. Rufus, observing Ren's calm demeanor, asked if he truly had no intention of trying to escape. Ren replied that he simply wouldn't let the situation get to him, feeling it was utterly unfair to be imprisoned for no reason. He reflected internally that there were good people within the castle, such as the servants and a man named Ahab, and if he were to flee, someone innocent might be harmed. His thoughts continued, considering that with Marie's aggressive nature, if he broke out, she would likely search the Dragon's Rest Inn, potentially endangering Nene and the others there. Meanwhile, Rufus, still in his cell, noticed more visitors approaching the prison entrance. Ren looked up, surprised to see Ahab, a man he knew from the castle, and Latina, a young woman with long, light hair, standing before his cell. Ahab greeted him warmly, expressing his astonishment at finding him there. Ren questioned Latina, asking how this situation had come to be. She looked down, her expression filled with remorse, and apologized, confessing that she had told Marie everything. Latina, her eyes closed in remorse, confessed to Ren that Marie had contacted her while he was at the mines. She had believed Marie was still imprisoned, but Marie had sought to know more about him, the one everyone in town had been discussing. She further admitted that she had accidentally revealed everything about his activities in town, expressing her disbelief that Marie would resort to such actions. Ren listened from behind the bars of his cell, while Commander Ahab stood nearby, observing the exchange. Suddenly, Commander Ahab, his expression resolute, declared his intention to help Ren break out of the prison. He added that he had more than a few people on board with this plan. He then instructed Ren to remain in the cell for another 2 days, explaining that he had bribed one of Marie's lackeys and would bring him food. Ren, surprised, questioned if such an act wasn't inappropriate for a town guard, but Ahab insisted, stating he had been watching the situation and found it utterly unfair. Latina and Ahab listened as Ren stated he had his own supplies and warned Ahab not to overdo his efforts. Ahab acknowledged Ren's mention of an item box and confirmed his understanding. Ahab then recalled another detail, mentioning that the green-haired archer had been running all over town trying to help Ren. Ren looked down, a somber expression on his face, as he realized the extent of the concern. He mused that the situation had grown larger than he expected, and that the entire town was worried about it. Ahab confirmed his plan to secure the keys and return in the evening, with their move scheduled for 2 days later. Ren, still processing the information, simply acknowledged him. Ahab then inquired if Ren was alright with no food for the time being. Without warning, Ren gripped one of the cell bars and, with a visible strain, bent it significantly. Ahab, standing outside, stared in utter shock at the display of unexpected power. He then mused that it would be problematic if someone noticed, so he would fix it later. A slight smile touched his lips as he realized this must be the very ability Marie had been so keen to uncover. He vehemently declared that his decision to bend the cell bars stemmed from his concern for others, fearing they might be harmed because of him. Commander Ahab, listening intently, remarked that they no longer needed to steal the key, while Latina wondered if their efforts had become useless. He then expressed his profound gratitude, explaining that their presence had given him the courage he needed. Ahab, confirming their plan, instructed him to ensure the bent iron bars remained unnoticed for the next 2 days, to which Latina simply acknowledged. With their conversation concluded, Commander Ahab and Latina turned and began to walk away from Ren's cell, leaving him to his thoughts. Moments later, from an adjacent cell, Rufus called out to Ren, asking if he would mind if he joined him. He explained that their long conversation had made him realize he no longer wished to languish in his prison. Rufus continued, admitting he had lost an arm and could no longer be an adventurer, but offered to serve as Ren's shield during the escape. He declared his refusal to keep running from his past or his enemies, prompting Ren to look at his missing arm with a surprised expression. Rufus then extended a small vial through the bars, tentatively asking if Ren would try drinking its contents. He took a drink from the vial, and a look of profound shock and disbelief spread across his face. The vial, labeled Dew of the World Tree, was known to heal all injuries and purify tainted land. As a brilliant light enveloped his arm, Rufus watched in astonishment as his lost limb miraculously regenerated, exclaiming that his arm had returned. Ren, witnessing the impossible recovery, stared wide-eyed, a thought forming in his mind that this entire situation was truly unbelievable. He then reflected on the implications of escaping with Rufus. While the escape itself seemed feasible, he realized he would no longer be able to remain in Tyria Aaron. If royal soldiers were sent to pursue them, they would be forced into a life of constant flight, a fate he wished to avoid dragging more people into. The day of the jailbreak had finally arrived, a moment long anticipated. As the escape began, Wendy rushed forward, her voice filled with concern as she called out to Ren, asking if he was all right. Rufus and Ahab followed close behind. He struggled with the prison bars, his face contorted in effort, as Wendy watched from behind, trapped. With a surge of his power, the metal bars bent and twisted, allowing her to pass through. Wendy, startled by the sudden bending of the bars, exclaimed that he had truly scared her. He quickly apologized, explaining that he had weakened the bars with his skill. Ahab, ever practical, urged them to hurry, but Ren insisted he would not leave without Rufus, who stood nearby. Moments later, Rufus and Ahab moved through the prison corridors, their escape now fully underway. Rufus, walking beside Ahab, reflected on his past desertion during battle, admitting he had run back then, but declared that things were different now. He revealed that Ren had even healed his old wounds, and he intended to repay that debt. Ahab, however, seemed to dismiss his words, telling him not to be like that. Ren, with a confident smile, reiterated that if they were all in agreement, they would escape together, urging them to hurry. Soon, their footsteps echoed as they ran across the open ground outside the prison walls, making their desperate dash for freedom. Their escape was not unnoticed. 2 guards spotted Ahab and immediately shouted for him to stop, demanding to know where he thought he was going. Ahab, ignoring the guards, urgently informed Run that a wagon was ready at the gate and instructed him to run for it. Run, surprised, watched as Latina and Niblis, mounted on horses, appeared to be blocking the path. Latina, feigning innocence, apologized, claiming her horse seemed to want a drink, while Niblis echoed her, saying his horse also wanted one. Run, recognizing the old man, called out his name in disbelief. Just as Rin processed the unexpected obstruction, Marie, riding fiercely on horseback, appeared from behind, her voice sharp as she commanded them to stop right there. She watched as the chaos erupted around her. Nene, with a mischievous grin, declared her frying pan had slipped, sending it tumbling to obstruct the pursuing horses. Simultaneously, Niblis feigned an accident, claiming his hammer had also slipped and landed squarely in the path of the royal mounts. Wendy looked on, startled by the sudden, coordinated disruption, while the horses reared in panic, their riders struggling to maintain control. Rin, observing the unfolding scene, realized the citizens were actively creating a diversion. As the horses struggled, Niblis defiantly confronted Marie, shouting that the king's orders could go to hell. His words were a direct challenge to her authority and the crown itself, leaving her stunned by the sheer audacity of his rebellion. Marie, recovering from her shock, angrily warned the defiant crowd that such insolence, defying the king's direct order, was punishable by severe penalties. Yet, her threats were met with further resistance. A voice from the crowd retorted, challenging her to try and imprison them all, accusing the king of bleeding them dry with excessive taxes. Marie could only clench her fist, exasperated by the widespread contempt for royal authority. With the path cleared by the citizens' brave defiance, Rin looked back at them, his expression filled with profound gratitude. He raised a hand in acknowledgement, silently vowing that he would never forget this debt, a promise etched into his heart as he continued his escape. Latina apologized to Rin for involving him in the prison break, but he quickly dismissed her concerns. He admitted to being more worried about the townspeople's fate after the recent events. Latina, however, reassured him, stating that she would take responsibility and clean up the mess, as it was their collective fault for allowing the king to act unchecked. Rin, taken aback, questioned if Latina was truly that important. Commander Ahab then clarified her identity, revealing her to be the former king's niece and the daughter of the king of a neighboring country, thus explaining her significant political standing. He then confidently asserted that she would handle everything from that point forward. Commander Ahab then turned his attention to Run, expressing a long-held desire to embark on a journey and noting Ren's inherent potential. He declared his trust in Run, stating he was counting on him. Ren, surprised by this unexpected declaration, asked if Ahab intended to join them. With a determined expression, Ahab announced it was time to move out. He, still somewhat bewildered but accepting the new developments, responded affirmatively as a covered wagon stood ready for their departure. As he prepared to leave, he spotted Wendy and, with a look of surprise, asked if she, Elena, was also joining their journey. Wendy, looking somewhat downcast, explained to a shocked Ren that she had initially thought she could help him, but her grandfather had explicitly told her to go become his bride, and then unceremoniously pushed her out the door. Ren, still trying to comprehend the growing party, turned to Latina and asked why she, Farah, was also there. She calmly explained that she had simply been called to a guild in another town and had hitched a ride with someone she knew, dismissing it as a minor detail. Commander Ahab, with Wendy by his side, urged everyone to move out. Ren, however, remained deep in thought, a serious expression on his face, as he realized that the sheer number of coincidences was too great for this to be mere chance. The wagon began its journey, leaving the town behind. The journey continued under a vast, open sky, with the group traversing rugged terrain and distant mountains. He paused by a flowing river, observing the water with a thoughtful expression, perhaps contemplating the path ahead or the recent unexpected additions to their party. Nearby, Commander Ahab maintained his stoic demeanor, while Wendy, ever cheerful, celebrated a small catch, her enthusiasm a stark contrast to the quiet contemplation. As they continued, he found himself walking alongside Latina, both sharing a moment of quiet camaraderie, their expressions reflecting a shared sense of purpose. Later, Commander Ahab explained to him that Riais and Tiria Aaron, once a single country, had recently split, but the ruling brothers remained on good terms, which was why they encountered no checkpoints leaving Tiria Aaron. He understood that the town ahead, Aaron Riais, was their next destination. Upon arriving in the bustling town, the group discussed their immediate plans. Latina announced her intention to head to the Adventurers Guild, while Commander Ahab declared he would re-register there as well. Wendy, ever eager, suggested they check out the shops, and a guard, now free from his duties, expressed his desire to enjoy his newfound freedom at the tavern. He, however, had a different idea, hoping to find an inn where they could all stay together, even if it meant waiting just one more day. As he walked through the town, he overheard a conversation. An elderly man, with a shrewd smile, assured a young woman that money could come anytime, as his lord was generous. However, he warned her that delaying repayment would incur additional charges, subtly implying that her father's health might suffer from the stress. The old man then leaned in, offering to help her out personally, a proposition that clearly distressed the young woman, who recoiled, murmuring that it couldn't be. Seeing her distress, he quickly intervened, calling out to them to stop. He stood firm between the distressed young woman and the old man, who, with a slight smirk, questioned his identity and connection to the girl. Ren clarified that he was not an acquaintance, but expressed concern for a child in such a predicament. The old man, however, dismissed his intervention, claiming it was a contract made with her parent and that an outsider should not interfere. He then pressed for details about the contract. The old man explained that he had lent her father a substantial sum of money, a debt that now weighed heavily on the young woman. The old man then clarified that the amount due that day was 10 gold coins, a figure the young woman immediately disputed, insisting it was only 8. The old man, observing Ren's apparent status as an outsider, mockingly praised his willingness to help a stranger. Ren, ignoring the taunt, produced a pouch of coins and asked if the sum would cover the debt. Ren then declared the day's payment settled and sternly warned the old man never to speak to the young woman again. Undeterred, the old man, with a sly grin, suggested Ren accompany him, promising to take good care of him. The old man, chuckling to himself, walked away, remarking that such half-hearted kindness would eventually be Ren's undoing. The young woman, relieved, asked Ren if he was all right and inquired about the identity of the man. Ren, meanwhile, was internally astonished by the sheer amount of money he had just spent, thinking of Farasan's incredible wealth. She then explained, with tears in her eyes, that the man was Karsama, the town's priest. Due to various circumstances, her father had borrowed money from many sources, and Karsama had kindly taken over all those debts on his behalf. She profusely thanked Ren, promising to repay him someday. Ren, with a reassuring smile, told her not to worry about it, stating that his actions were purely for his own satisfaction and she shouldn't dwell on it. He stood quietly as the young woman, her cheeks flushed, introduced herself as Fana and, with a hint of shyness, asked for his name. Latina watched the exchange with a gentle smile. Moments later, Latina turned to him, suggesting they accept the offer to stay at Fana's family inn, given their current location. Fana, eager, then extended a formal invitation to Latina, addressing her as Farasama, and offered them lodging for the night. The group soon found themselves amidst the quaint, well-maintained buildings of the town, making their way towards the inn. Upon their arrival, Fana burst through the door, announcing her return to her father, Heinz, who sat patiently inside. He greeted her, then, with a curious gaze, inquired about the two strangers accompanying her. Heinz, introducing himself, expressed profound gratitude for Ren's actions in saving his daughter, extending an open invitation for them to stay at the inn for as long as they wished. Ren, observing his surroundings, noted the inn's sturdy construction and ample space. As the conversation continued, Rufus, a man with a sharp gaze, pressed Heinz, demanding to know why he was struggling financially. Ahab, a man with a serious expression, echoed the question, asking directly why he was broke. Heinz remained silent, his expression troubled. Ren, observing the tense exchange, realized this was a sensitive matter that Heinz likely wished to keep from Fana. Noticing his daughter's presence, Heinz quickly interjected, asking Fana to tidy up the front entrance, effectively sending her away from the difficult discussion. With Fana gone, Heinz began to explain, recounting how the inn had once thrived, with his entire family working diligently to maintain it. However, one day, the local lord arrived, brazenly demanding his wife, Lila, as his own. He continued, explaining that he naturally refused the lord's outrageous demand. From that point onward, misfortunes began to accumulate, starting with minor issues like an unusual increase in rats and supplies arriving already spoiled. Ren listened, a growing sense of unease settling over him. Heinz concluded his grim account by revealing that his trusted merchant guild contact had suddenly passed away. He admitted to having no concrete proof, but he was utterly convinced that the lord was behind it all. Latina stood beside Ren, her expression mirroring his concern. Ren listened as Heinz continued his somber tale, explaining that despite his and his daughter's best efforts, the harassment against the inn only intensified. He then revealed that his wife passed away, attributing her death to the immense stress, even though the doctors cited an epidemic. Latina listened intently, her expression serious. Heinz, clutching his head in despair, realized in hindsight that the people who lent him money were likely working for the Lord. They continuously found excuses to raise the interest, and before he knew it, the debt had spiraled out of control. Elsewhere, Rufus, the man with spiky light hair, impatiently asked if the others were finished talking. He declared his intention to head to the Adventurers Guild. Commander Ahab and Latina stood nearby, both silent and contemplative. He then wondered aloud if the weapon shop would take his grandfather's creation. Wendy, standing beside him, announced she was off to the tavern. Latina, with a thoughtful expression, agreed to go as well. Back at the inn, Heinz looked surprised as Ren reassured him. Ren explained that the others didn't leave because they didn't want to hear his story. He continued, suggesting that Elena, Wendy, was likely trying to sell her weapons and armor to get some money, probably inspired by Farah, Latina, just as he was. Heinz, looking apologetic, admitted that he probably shouldn't have burdened new guests with his troubles. Ren, however, offered a hopeful smile, telling him that once he felt better, he could start fighting back. He then extended his hand, offering to help. Heinz looked at the offered bottle of water, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Ren found a surprising enjoyment in clearing the monster-infested fields around town. He reflected that helping the local populace not only earned him allies, but also ensured that anything he gathered through his King of Gathering skill went straight into his item box. He also noted that the suspicious individuals who had been keeping tabs on him were now focusing their attention exclusively on him. Moments later, an old woman from the town approached him, expressing her deep gratitude for his assistance. She explained that this area, being on the outskirts, was particularly prone to monster attacks on the fields. Ren, with a humble smile, dismissed her thanks, stating it was nothing. Suddenly, the air filled with shrieks as goblins emerged from the tall crops, charging towards them. Ren reacted instantly, instructing the old woman to quickly get behind his golem summoned for protection. The golem, now sporting a small, rather charming hat, engaged the attackers, splattering one with a powerful blow. The old woman, observing the scene, commented on how cute the golem looked with its hat. Ren explained that he had put it on to make the summon less frightening to the townsfolk. After the immediate threat was neutralized, Liju, another summoner, approached Ren with his spider summon, Renren. She informed him that their request was complete and they were heading back, offering him some mithril spider silk. Renren, the spider, affirmed her statement. Liju then turned to Ren, thanking him for his help. He returned her thanks, addressing her by name. She, in turn, playfully referred to him as Clean Freak Summoner. He immediately protested, asking her not to use that nickname. However, she simply retorted that it was what everyone in town called him. The old woman, noticing Ren's momentary pause, pointed out that his hands had stopped moving. She also observed that Li Ju was getting along well with everyone. Ren, snapping out of his thoughts, mused that he might finally be starting to look the part of a real adventurer. As the day drew to a close, the old woman and the golem stood together, gazing out over the vast fields. She remarked that the peaceful scene felt like something out of a fantasy postcard. Ren surveyed the wreckage of what appeared to be a collapsed structure, a familiar sigh escaping him as he realized the extent of the mess. He muttered that it was worth cleaning up, despite his exasperation. He then arrived at an inn, where the innkeeper, Heinz, apologized profusely for the untidy entrance, explaining he hadn't had time to clean properly. Ren, recognizing the situation, offered to take care of it, noting that Collins must be causing trouble again. Ren then presented Heinz with a freshly picked, delicious apple, assuring him not to worry about the mess as the inn had been bustling with customers lately. Heinz expressed his gratitude, acknowledging Ren's consistent provision of the best ingredients. The innkeeper, beaming, affirmed his commitment to doing his best, while Ren expressed his simple joy in being able to help, even in a small way, attributing the inn's success to Heinz's increasingly popular cooking. The quiet town stood under a cloudy sky, its buildings nestled together, seemingly peaceful. However, the tranquility was shattered as shadowy figures moved stealthily through the undergrowth, their footsteps barely audible. They approached the inn, and with a sharp crack, a window was forced open, allowing them to slip inside. Suddenly, a massive, shadowy spider, Renren, appeared, startling the intruders. They cried out in terror as the creature moved to ensnare them. Ren, hearing the commotion, rushed to the scene, calling out to Li Jue to confirm if she had caught them. Li Jue confirmed her success, stating that she had not let a single one escape, and identified the captured men as the Lord's lackeys. Ren, surprised by their presence, demanded to know what they were doing there. She observed the three men, now tightly bound with spider silk, noting their stubborn silence. They refused to speak, offering no explanation for their intrusion. Ren, however, expressed concern for Miss Fana and the other guests still inside the inn, urging caution to avoid creating a scene. But Li Jue, alongside a stern-faced knight, declared that they would handle the interrogation themselves, promising to pry open the intruders' mouths. The knight, maintaining his stern demeanor, addressed the bound intruders. He acknowledged their likely desperation for quick cash, but firmly stated that their actions remained a crime, warning them against any attempts to plead for leniency. As the knight spoke, Ren approached the bound men, holding a large, glistening apple. He extended it towards one of the intruders, offering it to him. Ren reassured the wary man that the fruit was not poisoned, promising it was juicy, sweet, and truly delicious. The intruder looked on with a mixture of surprise and suspicion. The man, still bound, took a hesitant bite of the apple, his eyes widening in shock at its unexpected flavor. Ren, smiling gently, then offered him a flask of water. Both the man who ate the apple and another bearded intruder expressed profound amazement at the fruit's taste, describing it as if it were cleansing their very souls. The first man then inquired if such exquisite fruits were common to the region. The man, now visibly softened, declared his wish for his wife, children, and indeed everyone in town to experience the taste of these apples. Ren, with a slight grin, admitted that he might have employed a small trick in their preparation. Ren then asked if the man was a merchant. He confirmed it, explaining that business had been poor for a long time, forcing him, a former adventurer, to take on unsavory jobs just to survive. Pressing for more information, Ren inquired why a figure named Collins was so obsessively harassing the inn. The man confessed he was merely a grunt, never told the true reason, only instructed to sneak in and steal food and valuables. The knight, his expression hardening, questioned the revelation. The bearded intruder then interjected, confirming that guy had indeed approached him about the matter. Li Jue, stepping forward with a stern gaze, warned the prisoners that she was not as lenient as Run and demanded they reveal everything. Under her intense scrutiny, the first intruder finally broke, confessing that Master Collins was consumed by fury, believing Heinz was responsible for the death of the innkeeper Lila, and had hired them to drive Heinz out of town. Ren, hearing this, reacted with a frustrated outburst, realizing Collins had caused Lila's stress and was now unjustly blaming others. The terrified intruder, desperate for mercy, pleaded that he would never repeat such actions. He listened as the tied intruder was discussed, the man lamenting that turning him over to the local guards might not be enough, as a noble's involvement could see him walk free. Ren, his expression grim, declared that was enough. He then stated his intention to take the intruder himself to the royal capital at Ray's End, acknowledging that Master Collins might still try to cover up his actions. The knight warned him that if he ended up using his abilities, it would cause a scene and he could get hurt, reminding him of his responsibilities at the inn. Ren, however, insisted, stating he would take that risk, as the situation needed to be dealt with properly. Meanwhile, back at the inn, Heinz, Li Jue, and Farah discussed the gravity of Master Collins's actions. Li Jue explained that even the Adventurers Guild staff had been whispering about it, but the guild would not act recklessly when nobles were involved, despite the unforgivable nature of his deeds. Farah agreed, adding that Ren would make a great wife someday, a comment that seemed to fluster Heinz. He then suggested they wait for Rufus's report for now, while he focused on figuring out the next big dish for the menu. Outside, the inn's cheerful atmosphere returned as someone called out, inviting everyone in for hot pot. A few days later, the harassment started up again, leaving debris scattered outside the inn. Ren, however, was already sweeping it away, his expression calm. As he continued to clean, a small, glowing bottle labeled demon blood was visible among the debris, a curious find. He muttered that he wasn't complaining about the extra work. Later, as he prepared to leave, Farah greeted him, acknowledging his good work for the day. He stood, a bottle of what he called demon blood in hand, his expression tense. Farah, observing him, inquired about his demeanor and the nature of a demon, asking for clarification on what exactly a demon was. She explained that demons were fundamentally different from humans and usually much stronger. The presence of the demon blood suggested either a wounded demon had passed through or someone powerful enough to wound one had been there. The implications of this discovery left Ren feeling deeply uneasy. Considering the local threats, Farah mused that the only monster in the vicinity that might stand a chance against a demon was the dead spider, Ren, who made a soft, chittering sound in response. Ren then noted that Ren's poison had become quite potent lately, and Farah agreed, acknowledging the creature's increased attachment to him. Farah admitted she never thought she would see Ren get so close to a monster, but she recognized the significant tactical options Ren's poison provided. She encouraged him to continue utilizing it during the day. As they spoke, a knight called out to Farah, announcing that they were ready to depart. Farah quickly apologized and confirmed she was coming, leaving Ren with a slightly bewildered expression. Ren was left to ponder the implications of a demon's presence, hoping nothing untoward would occur. Farah, before fully departing, reminded him to be careful and mentioned she would be checking on the new recruits at the guild. Ren lay asleep in his bed as Li Jue gently tried to rouse him, urging him to wake up and come outside. Still groggy, he questioned her, but she insisted he hurry. Stepping outside, his eyes widened in shock as he saw a young, injured demonkin girl lying on the cobblestone street, barely conscious. He knelt beside her, observing her condition and noticing the heavy slave collar around her neck. He realized she was a demonkin, injured, and likely someone's slave. Li Jue, seeing the girl's plight, expressed her dismay, finding the situation awful. As he carefully held the small girl, Ren examined the collar, noting its seamless construction and heavy appearance, confirming it was indeed a mark of slavery. Li Jue, witnessing this, reflected on the harsh reality that this world truly practiced slavery, recalling a past instance where Marie had jokingly threatened to make her a slave. Li Jue further explained that demonkin were known for their strength, which often meant their slave collars were specially reinforced to prevent escape. Just then, a man named Ahab approached, asking if he had woken them. He dismissed the idea of talking outside, stating it wasn't a good place, and Ren suggested they head inside. Inside, with the demonkin girl resting on a bed, Ahab elaborated on the prejudice against demonkin. He explained that some people harbored such hatred for them that they would hunt and enslave them, despite slavery without legal grounds being officially forbidden. The injured demonkin girl lay still, a testament to the lingering cruelty in the world, where many still abused their power and trampled over others. Ahab continued, revealing that demon horns were rare and valuable vital organs, and if one were broken, the demonkin would not survive long. He suspected this particular child had been discarded by one of Collins' men, a revelation that shocked Ren. With a determined expression, Ren declared that if that was the case, he would simply take her in. Ahab, having heard Ren's decision, smirked, stating he knew Ren would choose to take in the demonkin girl. Immediately, Ren turned his attention to the demonkin girl's slave collar, declaring that they first needed to address that oppressive device, finding it abhorrent to place such a thing on a child. As he examined the collar, he realized its true nature. It was designed to deliver electric shocks if disobeyed, and only its owner could remove it. He wondered if the guild or smithing experts could help. Meanwhile, Ahab shifted his focus to the demonkin girl's broken horns, explaining that demon horns were highly compatible with magic, especially materials like mithril. He then exclaimed his admiration for Ren's amazing abilities. Considering Ahab's words, Ren pondered if reinforcing the horns with mithril might allow her to recover. He knew they could heal her, but a grim realization dawned on him. If demon horns were treated as valuable materials, it meant people were actively hunting demonkin for them. Despite the unsettling implications, Ren began the delicate process of mithril adjust work on the demonkin girl's broken horns, carefully manipulating the magical metal. Suddenly, a surge of energy emanated from the girl as her broken horn began to rapidly regenerate, startling both Ren and Ahab. who exclaimed in surprise. The regeneration was complete, an unreal and totally out of the norm feat, but it left the Demonkin girl utterly drained, with only her stamina remaining to be restored. Observing her many bruises, Rin realized that even without the broken horn, she had likely been at her limit. He offered her a vial containing a drop of the world tree, assuring her it would heal her in no time. He watched as the Demonkin girl, now with her horn fully restored, drank deeply from the bottle, her eyes still closed in recovery. Suddenly, her eyes snapped open, wide with shock and a hint of fear as she looked down at her newly regenerated horn, a silent gasp escaping her lips. Her face contorted with a mixture of confusion and apprehension, a soft, questioning sound escaping her. Ahab attempted to reassure her, stating that no one there would harm her, but Lijiu voiced a concern that the girl might not understand their language. Rin then inquired about the girl's village, prompting Ahab to explain that Demonkin children, much like humans, typically remain in their home villages during childhood, where they are taught to speak and behave. A look of dawning horror crossed her face as she processed Ahab's words, realizing that her village must have been attacked, or she had been kidnapped. He declared that regardless of her past, they needed to ensure her safety, and with a determined expression, he presented a fluffy, mild sheep to her. She stared at the creature with wide, surprised eyes, a soft sound of wonder escaping her lips as the sheep gently nudged her. She embraced the fluffy creature, burying her face in its soft wool, a genuine smile finally gracing her features. Ahab acknowledged their success in caring for her thus far, but stressed the need to keep her hidden until Rufus could secure the warrant for Collins. Ren, beaming, declared that fluff power had saved the day, much to Ahab's slight confusion. He affirmed the plan, stating that the mild sheep would remain summoned around the Demonkin girl constantly, and that Wendy and Elena would be tasked with teaching her to speak. Meanwhile, outside the inn, the quiet street lay under a cloudy sky. Moments later, Rin emerged from the building, his thoughts dwelling on the Demonkin girl. He mused that there was no trash today, perhaps because they had been treating her like garbage. As he stepped onto the cobblestone street, a group of 3 armored knights suddenly called out to him, demanding his attention. He responded with a questioning sound, his expression wary. The knights then informed him that they had received a report from Lord Collins regarding a stolen slave, and they suspected Hines. Rin, feigning ignorance, inquired about the slave's appearance. The knights described her as a young Demonkin girl. A realization dawned on him. Collins must have deliberately left her out in the open, knowing they would help her, just to stir up trouble. The knights continued, stating that if the girl was indeed present, they would be forced to arrest Hines. They added that her horn was apparently broken and that she had been taken near the inn. At that moment, Ahab appeared, interjecting that he had not seen any Demonkin girl with a broken horn. He questioned the knights, asking if a slave would not typically wear a collar, and suggested they simply call her by name if she was truly a slave. The knights, however, insisted that Lord Collins had specifically ordered them to search this location and nowhere else. The knights then demanded to search inside the inn. Ahab, with a resigned expression, granted them permission to proceed. Inside, unaware of the approaching search, the Demonkin girl sat at a table, seemingly engaged in a lesson, with Farah and Hines seated beside her. Despite the knight's search, one of them observed that the Demonkin girl's horns were intact, and she wore no collar, confirming her nature but noting the absence of a slave mark. As the knight processed this information, Hines quickly interjected, explaining that the Demonkin girl was his adventurer cousin's little sister, left in his care while her family was away on a quest. The knight acknowledged his explanation. He further elaborated, stating that many people in town feared Demonkin, which was the reason they were keeping her hidden inside the inn. Rin listened intently, his expression unreadable. The knight, having heard Hines's explanation, concluded that her features did not match the description of the individual they were truly seeking, and instructed them to simply keep her indoors for the time being. With the knights departing from the inn, Hines turned to Rin, wondering aloud if their successful deception was somehow thanks to him. Rin appeared surprised by the suggestion, asking what he could have possibly done. He then explained Rin's unexpected influence, revealing that Rin had become famous for cleaning up the town, to the point where people now referred to him as the Spider Guy's friend. Rin seemed genuinely unaware of his growing reputation. Rin, still processing his newfound reputation, inquired about Hines's motivations for cleaning the town. Hines replied that the situation was much the same in Tyria Aaron. Hines elaborated on his reasons, clarifying that his actions were not solely out of goodwill, but also because he received benefits and found enjoyment in the work. He then added that Rin's involvement had truly helped them out of their predicament this time. Rin smiled, understanding the implications. He continued, emphasizing the impact of Rin's involvement, explaining that because Rin was known and trusted by the townspeople, the guards had ultimately backed off. Hines further elaborated on the positive outcome, noting that normally the guards would have confiscated everything, but thanks to Rin's reputation, they wouldn't have to dip into their drinking budget. He also mused that the silver coin they offered was more like insurance in case things went poorly. He observes the Demonkin girl, who expresses her displeasure with a soft tone. She looks down, seemingly embarrassed, as Hines reminds her that it was Rin who had fixed her horn. He asks if she is curious about Rin. He then announces his intention to leave and find a cleaning job. Outside, he encounters the old woman, who asks if everything is all right after the guard's visit. He assures her there is nothing to worry about, explaining that one of the guards was merely a neighbor's child. She, in turn, asks him to inform her if anything further occurs. With a broom in hand, he sets off, determined to give his best to the cleaning task. Meanwhile, in a quiet graveyard, Lijiu stands beside Renren, the large spider. Elsewhere, Ren pauses, his gaze distant, lost in thought. Ren found himself cornered by three men who immediately recognized him as a summoner, expressing their surprise at his abilities and the presence of a mithril spider. They grumbled about a poorly paid job that had turned into a mess, cursing Count Collins's name. Ren, in turn, questioned his companion, Ren, about its current state. He swiftly rejected their invitation, prompting the men to attack. However, Ren was quicker, launching a rapid counterattack that incapacitated one of the assailants, binding him tightly in its strong silk. As the chaos unfolded, another of the attackers cried out in pain, overwhelmed by Ren's unexpected summoning prowess. He marveled at the sheer number of spiders Ren commanded and the fact that he could summon them without any visible chanting, deeming it highly abnormal. Moments later, all three attackers lay completely cocooned by Ren's potent silk. Ren reflected on the ease of his victory, attributing it to his cheap powers, and decided to hand the bound men over to the local guards. Meanwhile, the Demonkin girl, now safe and sound, greeted Farah with a shy, affectionate Onii-chan, to which Farah warmly welcomed her back. Farah and Heinz then turned to Run, praising the Demonkin girl's remarkable aptitude for learning, declaring that teaching her was entirely worthwhile. Run, observing the Demonkin girl's pure smile, expressed his amazement at her intelligence. He resolved to confront Collins and uncover her true origins, convinced that she must have been cherished by her family before her enslavement. As they continued their journey, Ren, Farah, and Heinz discussed the Demonkin girl's lack of a name. Ren asked if she remembered what her parents called her, but she could not recall. He apologized for confusing her, and she readily agreed to accept a new name from them. Farah eagerly suggested Pink as a name, referencing the Demonkin girl's hair color, but Ren quickly rejected the idea. Heinz then took his turn, proposing Claria Chris. He highlighted her beautiful blue eyes and explained that the name belonged to a legendary blue dagger, symbolizing both beauty and strength. The Demonkin girl, holding a mild sheep, listened intently. She looked up, her eyes wide with wonder as the name, Claria Chris, was spoken. Ren, beaming, confirmed that from this day forward, she would be known by that beautiful and strong name, expressing his admiration for it. Moments later, a cheerful voice greeted her with, "Good morning, Claria." She responded with an equally bright and joyful okay, her face alight with a wide smile. As the morning progressed, she continued to radiate happiness, playfully interacting with the fluffy mild sheep, while Ren watched over them, a soft smile on his face. Meanwhile, Ren conversed with Elena and Farah, who had just returned that morning. Farah explained that the mission had been dangerous, but thanks to the item Ren had given her and the young girl, they had made it out. She added that the rookies had indeed gotten stuck in a goblin nest, just as they had anticipated. Ren expressed his relief, glad he could help. Farah then turned her attention to the Demonkin girl, introducing herself and asking for her name. The girl, now Claria Chris, happily introduced herself, explaining that Elena and Ren had given her the name. Ren observed, noting how quickly Farah had bonded with the child, remarking on their cool and great combination. Farah offered to stay with Claria Chris, suggesting they play in the courtyard since she had the day off. Ren, initially concerned about his daily cleaning job, readily agreed, entrusting Claria Chris to Farah's care. Farah, with a warm smile, promised they would have fun, and Claria Chris waved goodbye to Ren, calling him Onii-chan. As he watched Farah and Claria Chris walk away, Ren mused that they looked like mother and daughter. He then shook his head, admonishing himself to stop daydreaming. Later, he overheard two men, one of them Ahab, discussing how some newbie adventurers had been saved by a badass named Farah, and now everyone wanted to hire her. Ren nodded, realizing the rumors made sense given Farah's capabilities. Ren then approached Elena at the guild counter, asking if there were any new jobs for him. Elena, busy with other adventurers, informed him that he had 3 personal requests waiting. He expressed surprise at the mention of personal requests, recalling Farah's earlier statement that he could take anything. He then asked Elena to double-check the clients and the jobs, suspecting that yesterday's ambush might have stirred things up. Despite his suspicions, Ren decided to take all 3 requests, realizing that even if it was a trap, it might provide a lead on the enemy. He thanked Elena and then walked through the town, reflecting on the lack of further ambushes. He found it too calm, but was glad no one else had been hurt. He questioned the armored man, Ahab, asking if chill referred to him. Ahab confirmed it, adding that not all dangers descended from the sky. Ahab, however, dismissed Ren's gratitude, stating that it was merely repayment for the spear Ren had crafted for him. Ren seemed taken aback by this revelation. The armored man then elaborated on the spear's incredible power, revealing it was an orichalcum spear capable of piercing through an orc's armor and shield. Ren, delighted, acknowledged that this explained why he had received an orc warrior gem in his inventory. Ahab further clarified that loot from monsters defeated by his allies would also end up in Ren's item box. With their exchange concluded, Ahab instructed Ren to return without him, a directive Ren readily accepted. A few days later, Ren stood before Priest Kurtha, accompanied by Claria Chris. He presented the elderly priest with a small offering, explaining it was a token of appreciation for his kindness. Kurtha graciously accepted, expressing his thanks. The priest chuckled softly, assuring Ren there was no need for such formality and inviting him to return should he ever fall ill again. Ren listened intently, a thoughtful expression on his face. Lord Collins, an imposing figure with a grand mustache, questioned Ren and Heinz about their presence, his gaze sharp. He suspected them of bribing the guards, believing their visit was undoubtedly connected to the slave he sought. He declared them suspicious, no matter how he looked at them. Meanwhile, the Demonkin girl, Claria Chris, watched the exchange with wide, anxious eyes, wondering if the men were truly oblivious to something right in front of them. Heinz, looking uncomfortable, explained that both he and Farah were currently at the inn, leaving their residence unattended. One of Collins's guards pressed him, asking about the residence. The Demonkin girl flinched, her anxiety palpable. Lord Collins, seizing the opportunity, declared that if no one was there, they wouldn't mind a search. Ren, with a resigned sigh, agreed to lead the way, asking Li Jue if she had been observing as well. Li Jue, hidden from view, confirmed she had been watching in disbelief. She questioned Ren, asking why she couldn't simply deal with the intruders herself. He firmly told her not to get involved, then wondered aloud when Collins would finally leave. He further explained that any direct interference with Collins now would only cause trouble for Heinz. Ren added that Rufus should be returning from the capital soon, implying a need for patience. Li Jue, still concealed, clicked her tongue in annoyance, wondering why the guards weren't present and sensing that something was amiss. Despite her frustration, she reluctantly agreed to hold back. Back at the inn, Farah, seated at a table, pointed out the Demonkin girl to Lord Collins, informing him of the presence of demons nearby. Claria Chris looked up, startled and distressed. Lord Collins, however, merely glanced at the Demonkin, dismissing her with a wave of his hand. He noted her lack of a slave collar and declared that she was not what they were after, instructing his men to ignore her for now. One of Collins's guards openly expressed his disgust, while Claria Chris flinched, her face contorted in pain. Farah, observing the Demonkin girl intently, wondered if she was attempting to learn their language. Still observing the Demonkin girl, Farah questioned Lord Collins's actions, her voice laced with concern. The young Demonkin, still bearing her slave collar, looked downcast, while Ren watched the unfolding scene with a serious expression. He, Lord Collins, dismissed the Demonkin girl with a wave of his hand, turning to Priest Kurtha and asking if he truly cared about some demon. The priest, seemingly in agreement, offered a hesitant affirmation. Lord Collins then shifted his attention, demanding payment for the current transaction. He stated that if the 20 gold coins could not be paid, there was still the matter of the current payment. Collins Guard 1, holding a small pouch, confirmed the payment was ready. He expressed his frustration, cursing the lack of slaves and deeming the entire endeavor a waste of time. Collins Guard 1 inquired if that concluded their business for the day, and Lord Collins, with a dismissive gesture, ordered his men to depart. The heavy door of the residence closed, signaling the departure of Lord Collins and his retinue. Ren remarked on the superficiality of their captors, noting that they seemed to care only about the Demonkin's horns. Farah, her expression filled with indignation, wondered aloud how anyone could treat such a super cute girl with such cruelty. Li Jue, walking alongside Ren and Heinz, declared her intention to visit the town's merchant guild, acknowledging that Lord Collins essentially controlled it. She explained that they had accumulated too many items to sell without going through the guild. Ren voiced his hope that they would conduct business fairly, while Heinz worried they might simply be turned away at the door. The grand building of the merchant guild stood before them, its imposing facade hinting at the power it wielded within the town. Li Jue's thoughts echoed her earlier statement. She wanted to witness its operations for herself. Inside the guild, a portly man with a prominent mustache, likely the guild master, sat at a desk, reviewing documents with a focused expression. There, Ren and Farah stood before the guild master. Farah introduced herself as being with the Adventurers Guild, stating their purpose was to discuss a potential transaction. The master, recognizing Ren, then inquired if they were dealing in monster materials or equipment wholesale. She had just initiated the transaction, but Ren, observing the merchant guild master's dismissive demeanor, expressed his frustration, believing they would not be taken seriously. The guild master, in turn, questioned if Ren had merely found something while cleaning. Undaunted, Farah asserted that they should be judged solely on the quality of their product, not their appearance, reminding the guild master of the institution they represented. Heinz voiced his concern, wondering if the guild would truly give their items a fair assessment. Farah, however, remained confident, stating that quality gear always captures a merchant's attention. Overhearing their exchange, the guild master declared he would summon the individual responsible for equipment appraisal. Farah then clarified to Ren that her earlier mention of the Adventurers Guild was merely for research purposes. Ren, surprised by this revelation, questioned if the Adventurers Guild also engaged in buying goods. The guild master, now addressing someone out of sight, instructed a man named Billy to inspect the equipment brought by the adventurers who wished to conduct a wholesale transaction. Billy, who was in the midst of inspecting shoes, questioned the immediate demand. The guild master explained that these were the individuals Lord Collins had sent a notice about, emphasizing that Billy should handle them carefully to ensure a profit. Billy silently surmised that the guild master likely lacked the skill of appraisal himself, as the guild master openly declared the task a waste of his own time. The guild master inquired if there was an issue, but Billy quickly assured him there was none and promptly departed to fulfill the assignment. Moments later, Billy approached Ren and his companions, introducing himself as the handler of adventurer gear and equipment. Ren thanked him for his cooperation, and Billy then inquired about the items they had brought. Billy began his inspection, identifying one item as an iron sword. He noted that its hilt was crafted from world tree wood, but as he continued to examine it, a look of surprise crossed his face, suggesting he had discovered something unexpected. He stared intently, his mind set on the task. He decided to proceed with the appraisal. As Billy continued his work, he questioned Ren about the item's origin, asking where he had acquired it. Ren, looking surprised, wondered if he should reveal the full truth. Meanwhile, Farah and Lijua watched with expressions of awe, a subtle shimmer of magic surrounding them, hinting at the item's extraordinary nature. Rin glanced at his companions, perhaps seeking their silent approval or guidance. Billy, however, remained unconvinced, stating that Rin's explanation did not align with the item's properties and that he was not easily deceived like that mustache creep. Rin quickly clarified that they had indeed found it during a quest, exploring some ruins where many such items were present. Realizing the sensitivity of the conversation, Rin suggested they move to a more private setting, specifically a back room, noting that the current room was equipped with soundproofing magic. They relocated to a more secluded chamber, where Farah remarked that the situation seemed to hold more depth than initially apparent. Billy confirmed this, explaining that the room was specifically designed for private deals, ensuring that once the door was locked, no one could interrupt their discussion. Billy then adopted a grave expression, declaring that he had something crucial to impart before they proceeded with any business. He began to reveal the truth about Zogfa, the current guild master, explaining that Zogfa possessed no appraisal skills himself and lacked any real business acumen. The only reason the guild had not collapsed, Billy asserted, was due to the backing of Count Collins. Furthermore, Zogfa harbored deep jealousy towards those who did possess such skills, actively pushing them into dead-end roles within the guild. Billy continued, detailing the oppressive reality of the town. Once either Collins or Zogfa targeted someone, their career was effectively over. Farah, listening intently, questioned why he, with his evident skills, didn't simply leave and establish himself independently. He responded with a resolute expression, stating that they could not remain on Zogfa's sinking ship indefinitely. He then declared that the time for a coup was now, revealing that this conviction had solidified the moment he had seen Ren's unique weapon. He continued, explaining his audacious plan to run. Billy intended to take Ren's equipment to another city's guild, use it to secure a deal, and thereby orchestrate the downfall of Guild Master Zogfa. Run, taken aback by the sheer scale of the proposal, could only utter a stunned question. A coup. Ren, Hines, and Farah sat in a lavish room, looking towards Billy, who was seated with his back to them. The air was thick with the implication of a major political upheaval. A coup. Farah turned to Ron, her expression serious, as she considered the implications of the situation. She observed that Zogfa was now aligned with Collins, suggesting this development might present a crucial opportunity for them. Ren listened intently, his brow furrowed in thought. Ren, now speaking with Billy, expressed his concern that the coup could also lead to continued harassment against them. Billy, seated calmly, explained that if Zogfa was removed and he became the head of the guild, he could put an end to the constant harassment Hines had been enduring. Ren then asked Billy how much gear he intended to sell, mentioning he had about 100 swords like the ones he previously showed him. Farah interjected, advising Billy not to pay with platinum, as it was not accepted at regular stores, suggesting gold instead. Billy, looking somewhat flustered, agreed, acknowledging her point, but apologized, stating he could only offer a deposit at the moment. He calculated the price per sword, indicating the large quantity involved. Ren, his eyes wide with a mix of surprise and apprehension, realized the situation was rapidly escalating beyond anything he had initially imagined. Later, Ren, Hines, and Farah walked through a bustling street. Ren exclaimed in surprise, while Farah mused aloud about the coup and what might happen next, concluding that the outcome now rested entirely on Billy. Hines, startled by a passing carriage, commented on its rarity and opulence. Ren agreed, noting that such a fancy carriage was an unusual sight. From a window, Billy observed the same carriage, recognizing it as a noble's. His attention then shifted to Farah, who was seen walking alone in the distance, prompting him to exclaim her name in surprise. The scene shifted to a grand, ornate building, where a distinguished man with a prominent mustache, the host of a soiree, warmly welcomed a guest named Geyser, expressing gratitude for his attendance. Inside the lavish event, Billy, now dressed in formal attire, politely thanked the host for the invitation. However, he immediately expressed his apologies, stating he needed to step into town for a bit. The host, surprised, asked if something had happened, but then offered Billy a room to rest until the party truly began. At the soiree, a young man frantically explained that his fiancée, a blonde adventurer, had vanished without a trace. He questioned if Count Collins, the host, knew anything about her disappearance. The mention of a blonde adventurer seemed to pique Lord Collins's interest. As he pondered the description, a thoughtful expression on his face. He then turned to the anxious guest, acknowledging the situation and suggesting he might be able to offer assistance. The guest's face lit up with a glimmer of hope. After a moment of thought, he decided to extend an invitation to this mysterious blonde adventurer, Farah, to the party as well. Elsewhere, Hines held an official invitation, explaining to a Demon King girl that someone from Collins's group had specifically delivered it for Ren and Farah. The Demon King girl seemed surprised by the mention of a party. She exclaimed her desire to attend, but Hines quickly dismissed the idea, stating that it was clearly a trap, not a casual outing. Ren listened, his expression serious. Farah, now dressed in an elegant gown, discussed the invitation with Ren. She wondered why they had been invited, acknowledging the potential danger, but agreeing that backing out would feel like a defeat. As they entered the grand hall, an elderly host greeted Ren by name, confirming their expected arrival. Ren, also in formal attire, looked at Farah with admiration, complimenting her stunning appearance. Farah, however, remained vigilant, warning Ren not to let his guard down for even a second. She then shifted her focus to something more important. The two of them stood among the other elegantly dressed guests, observing the opulent party unfolding around them. Lord Collins, standing at the top of a grand staircase, extended his arms in a welcoming gesture, addressing the assembled guests. He inquired if everyone was enjoying the evening. Moments later, he personally greeted Run and Farah, welcoming them to his party. He openly admired Farah's stunning appearance, expressing a playful jealousy, while Ren offered a somewhat awkward thanks. As the conversation continued, a blonde guest nearby gasped, uttering the name Geyser. Simultaneously, a man in a knight's uniform, Geyser himself, spotted Farah and cried out her name with urgency. Ren, witnessing the sudden exchange, looked on in confusion, wondering if the two knew each other. Geyser quickly approached Farah, grabbing her arm and exclaiming that he had been searching for her. She recoiled, sharply telling him not to touch her. Lord Collins then intervened, introducing Geyser as the commander of Aniray's Second Night Order, emphasizing his status as the second strongest man in Aniray's. Geyser, undeterred, pressed Farah, asking if they were not, in fact, engaged. She vehemently denied it, clarifying that any such arrangement was merely a past decision made by their parents and held no current meaning. Lord Collins, observing the tense interaction, declared it a destined reunion, and, with a flourish, insisted that preparations for their wedding should begin immediately. Run, overhearing the word fiancé, reacted with wide-eyed shock. The sudden pronouncement left Run, Farah, and Geyser all staring in stunned disbelief, a collective cry of confusion escaping their lips. Lord Collins then turned to Geyser, playfully questioning if he, too, was in love with Farah. Farah, visibly distressed, declared the entire situation a joke and attempted to leave, while Geyser protested to Lord Collins that his actions were excessive. Ignoring the protests, Lord Collins issued a direct order to Geyser. He was to win Farah over and bring her to their side, explaining that this would provide more leverage against Hines and Run. Farah looked on, deeply uncomfortable. Run, having overheard Lord Collins's manipulative words, angrily called him a dumbass and demanded that he stop making Farah uncomfortable. Lord Collins, stroking his mustache thoughtfully, then turned his attention to Run, asking if he was truly against the proposed marriage. Ren, standing firm, confirmed his opposition, stating that Lord Collins was simply forcing the issue out of nowhere. He stood aghast as Lord Collins, with a sly smile, proposed a contest for Farah's hand, a gift competition where Ren and Geyser would each draw a card. Ren questioned the rules, but Lord Collins merely stated that his opponent would be Geyser. Farah, however, quickly interjected, arguing that it was unfair for Lord Collins to choose the items on the cards, suspecting he would favor Geyser. Lord Collins then clarified that whoever brought back the item written on their card before the deadline would win. Lord Collins, seemingly conceding, asked Farah for her suggestion. She requested to add one item to the cards herself, to which he agreed, but with the condition that it must be something that genuinely existed. With a determined expression, Farah confirmed her intention to add her own challenge to the contest. Lord Collins examined the card Farah had added, acknowledging that it was indeed a tough find, something he himself had only encountered once. Geyser watched with a hint of apprehension. With the cards prepared, Lord Collins instructed both Rin and Geyser to draw their respective challenges. Geyser drew his card, revealing the task of acquiring adamantite gauntlets. Lord Collins remarked on their extreme rarity, noting that only dwarves possessed the skill to forge such items, even if one had the money. Lord Collins then burst into laughter, pointing at Ren with a triumphant sneer. He declared that Ren had drawn the hardest item of all, a branch of the world tree, the very item Farah had added, calling it rotten luck. Ren stood amidst the murmuring guests, his expression a mix of shock and disbelief as the weight of the impossible task settled upon him. Lord Collins reiterated the terms of the contest, emphasizing that both men must present their item by the deadline. Recognizing that Ren had little to gain from winning, Lord Collins then offered a personal prize of his own. He declared his terms to Lord Collins, stating that if he won, the Lord must apologize to Hines. Lord Collins looked back, surprised by the demand. The Lord scoffed, reminding him that the world tree was sealed by elven barriers, making it impossible for anyone to approach, and dismissed the idea that he would ever acquire such a branch. He added that it was a trivial request, but agreed to it, confident in Ren's failure. Run, undeterred, pressed the matter, asking if Lord Collins had heard and agreed to those terms, loud and clear. The Lord's expression tightened, acknowledging the public declaration. Moments later, Lord Collins stared in utter disbelief, his eyes wide behind a magnifying glass, as Farah presented a small, gnarled branch. It was undeniably a genuine branch from the world tree, shimmering with an ethereal glow. The impossible had been achieved. Lord Collins knelt on the ground, utterly defeated, while Farah stood tall and triumphant, holding the world tree branch. Rin and Geyser, along with the assembled guests, witnessed the unexpected outcome. Her expression then hardened, and she confronted him, stating that his family had destroyed hers and ruined them. She challenged him, asking if he truly believed his words could change anything now, even as he confessed his love for her, admitting he had been too stubborn to say it before. As Farah walked away with Lord Collins, who curtly told Rin to leave, he was left to ponder her words. He wondered what kind of heavy past she carried, a past that seemed to intertwine with his own family's history.